Chapter 5509. Why were these idiots looking at her with such strange gazes? It was as if she had done something disgraceful. Wasn't this what hubby meant by reciprocating politeness? Arbor's small stoic face was taut. She waved her hand, and the thunderclap sword abruptly rose, absorbing the lightning spirit energy surging in from all directions. Qin Hong, you're dead meat. Arbor chanted coldly in her heart and didn't say another word to Qin Hong. She directly executed the Nine Heavens Lightning Sword Art's third move. 10,000 swords returned to origin. The large sword projection hanging in the air slowly formed, and purple-red lightning suppressed and rolled in the surroundings. It was as if there were small purple lightning dragons soaring in the clouds, rolling back and forth in the black fog. The group of black-clothed men holding the ancient bronze mirror were greatly shocked. After all, not everyone could gather the lightning spirit energy so quickly and release this kind of big move in succession. Furthermore, this crown princess in front of them didn't seem to have any lightning spirit energy. So to say, it was actually this sword, this sacred weapon, that actively attracted the lightning spirit energy of heaven and earth. Not to mention these disciples of the heavenly fates sect with mediocre aptitudes. Even if an exceptionally talented aristocratic family's young master came here and saw this scene, he would probably be so envious and angry that he would vomit blood. What was this called? This couldn't be called strength at all. This was wealth, all right. Who in the world would have the wealth to buy this ancient saint artifact? The little stoic, who didn't control the lightning spirit energy at all, relied on this sacred weapon in her hand to continuously release the ultimate move for the ages twice in a quarter of an hour. This time's 10,000 swords returned to origin was even more turbulent and terrifying than the last time. The instant the large sword projection pressed down on the central city's city gate, it was pushed open from the inside with a creak. The two young masters, Qin Xian and Qin Xian, led a group of people and looked at this scene in astonishment. It was too fast. Thousands of lightning bolts converged into a large sword projection wrapped in purple-red light, and the instant the city gate opened, it swiftly beheaded Qin Hong. Fast, so fast that people didn't even have time to react. Everyone could only stare blankly at the beautiful woman with a frosty expression outside the city gate. The little stoic was dressed in crimson battle clothes and was currently standing next to the decapitated Qin Hong with her sword in hand. The sword was a good sword, not stained with a drop of blood. She was a peerless beauty, but her eyes were emotionless. Even though her red clothes were stained with blood, it was hard to tell whether the redness of her clothes was more intense or whether the bloodstains made her clothes redder. I'm here for revenge. His icy cold voice was like a bead falling onto a jade plate, startling Qin Xian so much that her heart shrank. If you have the guts, then hand over the mysterious hall master of the talisman spell hall. This crown princess wants to fight him to the death. The fan and eldest young Sir Qin's hand fell to the ground with a clatter. Only then did he react and hurriedly bend down to pick it up. A trace of surprise flashed across his eyes. Why are you here? He reflexively looked behind her. There was no one in sight. Apart from a group of black-clothed men who had been knocked to the ground by the power of lightning, there was no one else. She came here alone? The eldest young master was in disbelief. She? Was she crazy? Why did he come here alone? Why didn't Mo Yen, that guy, stop her? What was Duan Yu doing squatting outside the city gate? Why didn't he stop her? They were all blind. The little stoic kicked away Qin Hong's corpse like she was kicking a piece of flatbread, directly sending the headless corpse rolling to the side. Chapter 5510. Zhuge Ling stammered, Second young master, the patriarch was killed. Qin Xian naturally saw it long ago, but he was still extremely shocked and didn't know what to say. Seeing that the second young master didn't say anything, everyone stared blankly at the fiend nearby, completely at a loss for words. The little stoic was instantly impatient. I'm not looking for you. I'm looking for that cursed practitioner. Are you coming out or not? It was Zhuge Ling who couldn't resist stammering. Our curse hall has many people. You are looking for which one? After saying that, he wished for nothing more than to slap himself. Why the hell are you stammering? Why are you intimidated by the little lady's aura? You're simply crazy. The place where the little stoic was standing right now was their heavenly fate's headquarters. She was alone, yet he was still stammering in front of her. It was simply too embarrassing. The curse practitioner that Qin Hong sent to kill me, get out here. The little stoic was concise and didn't want to waste words with them. Mo, whom she raised in the star domain, was killed by them just like that. Although Mo kept comforting her, saying that he would come back, who knew? Mo died because of Qin Hong, that old bitch. He wasn't a gentleman if he didn't avenge this grudge. Killing Qin Hong was the first step, and killing the curse practitioner that Qin Hong sent was the second step. The little stoic had a score to settle in her heart, and she had to calculate it clearly. Go invite Great Master Yi over, young Master Omega Kotoku ordered coldly. Great Master Yi? The little stoic was taken aback. The second young master explained aloofly, Yi Weisheng left for a day and a night 2 days ago. Now that I think about it, he should be the person you're looking for. He really was a good father. Young Master Omega Kotoku inwardly thought, he secretly sent people to cause trouble at the child's 1-month-old banquet behind everyone's back, right? Eldest young Master Qin was also pondering in his heart, it looks like father probably stepped on Jojo's tail. Otherwise, Jojo wouldn't come alone and talk about revenge every time he opened his mouth. I wonder who my father's men managed to get rid of. Could it be that they injured Emolian? First young master blinked and shook his head. The little stoic was so angry that she killed her father as soon as she attacked. It was evident that the situation was a bit serious. If Qin Hong was in heaven and knew that his 2 sons were thinking about this, he would probably be so angry that he would crawl out of the ground. They didn't want to avenge their father. Instead, they were wondering why Arbor was so angry. He was such a good son. The Raksha princess jumped to her feet and screamed with righteous indignation, eldest young master, second young master. Xiaomu came knocking on our door so arrogantly and killed our master without a second word. We must avenge him. Young master, please send me out to battle. Princess Luosha clasped her hands and shrieked. The eldest young sir glanced at her with a spurious smile. Rakshasa, you can't possibly be thinking that the little stoic definitely isn't your match just because her divine sense has been sealed by the great mirror image god sealing formation, right? Don't forget, your kung fu is not as good as my father's. Princess Luosha's heart trembled, but she suppressed it on the surface and said calmly, young master, you must be joking. This subordinate only wants to avenge my lord. I can't let my lord die in this bitch's hands in vain. Eldest young Master Qin cast her a glance. Princess Luosha only felt her heart turn cold, and she hastily cupped her fists and said, we absolutely can't let my lord die in vain. This stoic face is truly hateful. We absolutely can't let her off. Chapter 55:11. The young master's cold glance just now was truly a bit frightening, so the Raksha princess didn't dare to call her a bitch without thinking, so she cowardly changed her words. Pfft, a low chuckle was heard from the side. The crowd parted slightly, and a peerlessly gorgeous man in purple walked over with a grin. His seductive eyes flitted past the stupefied Raksha princess. Since the Raksha princess is so cordial, then there's no harm in letting her accept the challenge. Eldest young Sir Qin couldn't resist knitting his brows. Long Yun, this guy, wanted to tire his Charl to death by taking turns. That wouldn't do. He had watched this little stoic grow up. Although she had foolishly walked into a trap and her previous cleverness had vanished without a trace, he still had to protect her. He couldn't allow a bunch of people to bully her. Eldest young Sir Qin, who was about to speak, heard Omega Kotoku's cold voice. Then I'll let you perform. The Raksha princess's glowing eyes stared intently at the smiling, handsome, and distinguished Long Yun. Before she could react, she was instantly doused with a basin of cold water. Fuck. The Raksha princess couldn't help but widen her eyes, and her heart trembled in fright. What kind of joke was this? She merely wanted to perform in front of these young masters. At most, she was just shouting slogans. The young masters naturally knew how strong she was, so how could they let an egg like her run over and knock the stone stoic to death? She almost knelt down before young Sir Omega Kotoku. Last time, she was beaten by the little stoic until her parents couldn't recognize her. This time, she didn't want to be disfigured by the stoic again. Why, young sir, the Raksha princess stammered. Long Yun chuckled softly and was about to mock her when he heard the little stoic's stiff and icy voice. Scram! Does any Tom, Dick, or Harry have the right to fight with this crown princess? Everyone, can you not freaking be so arrogant in the enemy's camp? The eldest young sir coughed lightly and was about to step up to mediate when he heard young Sir Omega Kotoku say coldly, "Go." The Raksha princess knelt on the ground with a plop. Dead silence instantly descended on the scene. The second young master turned around and looked at her coldly, as if he was looking at a dead person. At this point, Princess Luo Sha knew that for the sake of Tian Yun and the second young master's face, she had to do it no matter what. Princess Raksha hurriedly got up from the ground and rushed to Arbor. I am not afraid of you, Arbor. Eldest young Sir Chin's hand that was holding the fan stiffened, and his mouth involuntarily twitched. Rakshasa's terrified face was actually even uglier and more humiliating than his refusal to fight. He was so scared that he was trembling all over, yet he was still so stubborn. I see that you came here alone. Presumably, you don't have any helpers. I'm so scared. What should I do? There was no turning back now. Arbor didn't wait for her to finish her nonsense. Without a word, he leaped forward and knocked Princess Luosha's head with his Thundercrash sword. Everyone, PFFF, Princess Luosha staggered a step and kowtowed to the ground. She prostrated herself on the ground in young Sir Omega Kotoku's direction. Arbor took advantage of the momentum and arrived behind her but in one step before ruthlessly kicking her. The eldest young sir couldn't help but raise his hand to cover his eyes. Then, he heard Princess Luosha let out an earth-shattering shriek, and she shot toward Long Yun like a cannonball. Chapter 55-12. Young Sir Long helplessly dodged to the side. The Raksha princess crashed headfirst into the crowd with a thump. Duga-ling, 7 flowers, Gong Song Fong, everyone simultaneously scattered and ran in all directions. Almost reflexively, they emptied out an area and waited silently. They allowed the Raksha princess to crash to the ground with a thump. This crash was truly too loud. Everyone looked at her speechlessly, feeling that the Raksha princess's fall was a bit unbearable. In reality, the Raksha princess didn't even know where she was right now. She was flying in the sky. She was swimming in the sea. Where was she? Who was she? The Raksha princess lifted her head with a nosebleed. Her face was a bit dazed, as if she had become stupid from the head knock, a load of nonsense. After the little stoic sent her flying with a kick, she cursed furiously. A pair of pitch-black eyes coldly swept over the Omega Kotoku group in front of her before ultimately landing on the Raksha princess, who was standing up shakily. The little stoic abruptly leaped up like an arrow, dashing toward the Raksha princess's back with thunderclap raised high in her hand. Eldest young Sir Chin hastily pulled Fan Meng, who was standing next to him, and the group once again dispersed at the fastest speed. They left behind a circular empty space in the center for the unlucky Raksha princess, who was all alone with her back facing Sir Jojo. It looked like this sword was about to strike a certain someone's head again. The Raksha princess abruptly turned around and knelt in front of Arbor with a plop. She hugged her calf and wailed tearfully, Crown Princess, please be magnanimous and don't strike my head again. I'll really be an idiot if you strike my head again." She finally saw through it now. The little Crown Princess looked at eldest young Sir Chin, young Sir Omega Kotoku, young Sir Duga-ling, Vice Hall Master Meng, and the others standing here all by themselves. But in reality, she was freaking Raksha who was all alone. Why the hell did she want to run her mouth and say that she wanted to avenge the Lord? Avenge what? She'd almost reported herself to death. Eldest young master's lips twitched as he stared at Princess Raksha. Suddenly, an angry roar came from the side. Rakshasa, what are you doing? Get up. The crowd silently parted again. At this time, a man walked out from the city gate. He was about the same age as Qin Hong. Behind him was the graceful Miss Ran. Zhao Qiran looked calmly at Arbor, a complicated expression flitting through her eyes. If it wasn't for the fact that the situation was out of control, she wouldn't have asked Second Master to come out. Now, she lowered her head, almost not daring to meet the second young master's sharp gaze. Second Master took a few steps forward with a cold face. Following behind him were two tall and sturdy men. One of them was an old man in a green robe with white hair and bangs parted in the middle. Arbor was too lazy to pay attention to the Second Master, but his gaze fell on the green-robed old man. The old man had a faint aura of talisman power flowing around him. It was too obvious. So much so that Xiao Mu immediately recognized her. "You're Yi Weisheng?" Sir Jojo asked with a solemn face. Hearing by reputation was not as good as meeting in person. This talisman master who had been at odds with her since Sikong planet finally appeared in front of her. Black Cat and Chu Qingfei's master, Tan Fa's grandmaster. This great master Ye's disciples and grand-disciples had spared no effort in plotting against her, from the lower star domain to the middle 6 prefectures and then to the upper 3 prefectures. They had fought with her many times and wanted to kill her at every turn. He finally appeared. Chapter 55-13. Duan Yu led 30,000 elites from the 3 prefectures and several 100,000 soldiers to station at the outskirts of Qingzhou's eastern reservoir. It was nearing evening, and the sun was setting in the west. 8th young Master Qi hastily lifted the curtain and walked inside before bowing. Has the underground passageway been completely opened? A certain person, who was wearing a thin white robe and had her hair loosely tied into a bundle, was currently leaning against a large tiger-skin chair. Her jade-like fingers were flipping through the map in front of her. She didn't even look up when she heard the footsteps and merely inquired aloofly. "Reporting to your Majesty, the Crown Prince of the Divine Province has arrived." Duan Yu's hand paused in the middle of flipping through the map, and he looked up at 8th young Master Qi with a frown. "Who did you say came?" "We have come." Mo Lien lifted the tent flap with one hand and walked inside expressionlessly. Duan Yu glared at her before flipping over and sitting upright. "Where's Jojo?" "Ha!" The aloof little person in Mo Lien's heart instantly jumped out. She pressed down on another small person that resembled Duan Yu and forcefully knocked on his head with a loud thud. "I'll beat you to death for asking about my wife so brazenly. I'll beat you to death. Beat you to death. What are you thinking about with your expressionless face?" Duan Yu tilted his head and suspiciously glanced at him. This guy had a taut face the moment he entered and didn't say anything. Why was he acting aloof just by standing there and avoiding the cold air? Prince Mo walked over and sat down across from him. "What's the current situation?" "There are tens of thousands of harpies densely set up above the Qingzhou kingdom, and they are reinforced by a formation. If we advance blindly, we will probably suffer. And judging from the terrain, they dug a passageway here, so there should be a corpse-nurturing ground below. We originally planned to break in from here, but unfortunately, we haven't been able to completely open the passageway after so many days. I suspect they have a backup plan in the near future, but we don't know what they are planning after brewing for so long." Duan Yu couldn't resist glaring at Mo Lien after saying everything in one go. "Why are you interrupting?" "I'm asking you, Jojo." He was baffled. She didn't want to talk to him at all, so why did he interrupt? Mo Lien tapped on the map on the table. Duan Yu moved closer to take a look, and his expression abruptly changed as he glared at him in disbelief. "You let her go in by herself?" Mo Lien expressionlessly looked at Duan Yu. "There are nearly 3,000 people in the Star Domain, including the Holy Water sect and the Foam clan. But there are tens of thousands of corpse puppets inside. There are also tens of thousands of you court guards and 200,000 divine prefecture soldiers in the storage talisman." "Duan Yu, the corners of 8th young Master Chi's mouth twitched. Duan Yu merely pretended not to hear Mo Lian's words. He calmly spread out the map and pointed at a spot in the center. I estimate that the tunnel should be dug open by tomorrow night. When the time comes, we'll bring our men here. Let's enter the city from the east first. When the time comes, use the god's stone cannon to blast open the middle gate and enter directly. Hee hee. Mo Lian gave him a noncommittal look. Didn't you just say that this Tianyin might make a big move? I wanted to wait a little longer, but we can't wait now. Duan Yu directly rolled his eyes at him and grumpily said, Jojo is inside, so I'm worried. Scram. This person's words were especially loathsome. He felt so stifled when he heard him call him Jojo. Scram my ass. Duan Yu directly ignored him and tossed the map to the side. He asked, I haven't been eating or sleeping well these past few days. Chapter 55:14. Did Jojo prepare good food for me? 8th young Master Chi, he really couldn't bear to look at His Majesty's adorably dumb appearance. Although he was a bit irritated these days because the siege was progressing slowly, how could he not provide for your Majesty's daily necessities? Mo Lian expressionlessly took out a storage talisman from her pocket and slapped it in front of Duan Yu. Eat, eat, eat. You only know how to eat. Hurry and get down to business after eating. Hui Feng turned around and grinned at 8th young Master Chi, who was trying to stifle his laughter. 8th brother Chi, Our Highness and Your Majesty get along like this. Let's not worry about it and help Our Highness arrange a tent first. Okay, this way please. 8th young Master Chi quickly nodded and left with Hui Feng. Duan Yu silently took out a row of dishes from the storage talisman and a bowl of sacred rice. He then looked up at the expressionless Mo Lian. How could you bear to let her run to such a dangerous place by herself? This guy's eyes brightened after eating a mouthful of fish. This was his favorite colorful divine fish, and this fish was roasted quite well. It wasn't Jojo's cooking. Mo Lian glanced at him and also sat down. She took out a clean bowl and chopsticks. You think I wanted to? You're too unbiased. If you have a stance, why don't I see you stopping her? Me? Duan Yu was confused as he looked at the person across from him in astonishment. Did this guy have no sense of shame? Did he know beforehand that Jojo would go to the Qingzhou base, the zombies' base camp? Mo Lian harumphed. Even if you knew beforehand, could you stop her? You're even more unprincipled than me. Who are you laughing at? He thought irritably. What if, I'm saying what if? Duan Yu scooped half a bowl of fish soup for himself with a ladle and couldn't resist asking quietly, what if Jojo was? He made a hand gesture and stared at Mo Lian nervously. What should we do? Do you think Jojo is stupid? She brought the light condensing mirror. Being locked once was enough. If she was locked a second time, what was she if not stupid? That's true. Duan Yu nodded in agreement. Jojo is extraordinarily intelligent, so she definitely won't be tricked by others. Mo Lian said in his heart, I was afraid that my wife would be possessed by a drama queen like last time. Her acting would be very fake and people would see through her. But have you ever thought about it? That Omega Kotoku is crazy. He might do something extreme to Jojo. How dare he? Mo Lian put down her chopsticks and frowned. Her emotions were fluctuating. Hurry up with that tunnel of yours. Dig it overnight. They're working on it as soon as possible. Duan Yu couldn't resist rolling his eyes. It should be ready by noon tomorrow at the earliest. On the other side, Arbor coldly stared at that gray-haired elderly man in a green robe. This elderly man had a head of short hair parted in the middle and wore a tight-fitting green robe with arrow sleeves, which made him look vigorous despite his age. His eyes were sharp and his spirit was hale and hearty, and his back was ramrod straight. Arbor coldly stared at the other party, a merciless flame dancing in her eyes. Yi Weisheng, old man, do you dare to step out and fight this crown princess? The white-haired elderly man, Master Yi, narrowed his eyes and looked up to stare deeply at Arbor. This stare was filled with countless peculiar emotions. Chapter 55:15. Little girl, this old man doesn't want to bully the weak. Great Master Yi coldly refused. You can, without another word, Arbor tossed out a dazzling golden attack talisman at Great Master Yi's face. Great Master Yi was truly shocked, and he swiftly dodged backward. He hastily tossed out a handful of jade talismans to form a defensive talisman matrix, barely blocking that golden light. With a crisp bang, the defensive talisman matrix instantly vanished under the golden light's impact. Yi Weixing truly jumped in fright, and his entire body practically shuddered. When she focused her eyes again, she only saw the little stoic crown prince Consort coldly glaring at her, her eyes brimming with ridicule. That's right, it was such a joke to say that he was bullying the weak. The little stoic's strength was evident as soon as she made a move. This first round of contact already forced this great Master Yi into a fluster and almost made a fool of himself in front of Second Master. When Second Master of the Qin estate saw this, he immediately berated, "You audacious woman, who exactly are you to dare come to our Qingzhou base alone to cause trouble? Do you know where this place is?" As soon as he finished speaking, the little stoic immediately tossed a dazzling divine power ball at him. Previously, she had practically thrown out all the spiritual power balls in her inventory, so she started throwing divine power balls now. Once she threw out all the divine power balls, she could start throwing holy power balls. Yes, that's right. Not only did she have several tens of millions of divine power balls, but she also had divine power balls made by the divine province's nether court guards and members of the Phoenix tribe. She also had Ji Qin, the Peony Fairy, Boundless Saber, Venerable Immortal Jinshang, and the other board transcendent god realms who made several thousand holy power balls. If you asked her what she had the most in her star domain, it would naturally be the various offensive and defensive treasures that could be used for consumption. She also had a lot of talismans, curses, and pills. Now, with so many divine power balls and holy power balls, it wasn't that the little stoic was bragging. In fact, she had enough capital to challenge the Heavenly Fates sect alone. Besides, she really wasn't alone. No one would believe her even if she said it. Everyone would think that her divine sense and star domain were sealed, forcing her to take out a storage talisman to store it. Actually, she had always kept a low profile and didn't really want to be in the limelight. However, if someone were to stop her from challenging the Grand Charm Master, then she could only let him die first. Because it was too annoying, he didn't want to listen to their long-winded chatter. If you want to fight, then fight. Why do you have to spout nonsense every time? As this thought flashed through the little stoic's mind, she had already made the first move. At the same time that this fellow threw out the god power ball, he had already taken a step forward and quickly rushed in front of Master Yi. Lightning flashed like a baton, smashing Grandmaster Yi's head to death. Grandmaster Yi probably didn't expect to meet such a straightforward person. For a moment, he was a little flustered and confused. He had seen the power of the thunderclap sword from afar, so he naturally did not dare to directly receive it with his hands. Pieces of jade talismans suddenly appeared around him and lined up in rows and columns. They slowly floated up and down and coiled around his body to form a solid armor formation. When the thunderclap sword came crashing down, it was blocked by the jade talisman formation and immediately bounced back several inches. However, it quickly attacked again, and its speed was even faster than before. Every time it bounced back, it would rapidly slash down in less than a few seconds. It was so fast that it was dazzling. Grandmaster Yi really wanted to ridicule it as a freak. However, he didn't have time to think about anything else. Every time the thunderclap sword came crashing down, it would destroy several of his jade talismans. Chapter 55:16. This forced him to replenish the jade talisman formations on him as soon as possible. Jade talismans were consumed one after another, causing his old face to twitch and his heart to ache. One had to know that these jade talismans required a very long time just to draw them. He could only draw 2 to 3 of these god-rank defensive jade talismans in a single night. Yet in less than a quarter of an hour, the number of jade talismans he had consumed, no, the number of jade talismans destroyed by that damn stoic face's sword reached as many as 10. Simply hateful. Grandmaster Yi couldn't resist berating angrily, "Junior, why aren't you stopping? This damn stoic face was seriously too arrogant. Who exactly gave her the guts to be so impudent in Heavenly Fortune's headquarters?" Second Master Qin Ao glowered at Arbor and snorted coldly. "Qin Xian, Qin Xian, what are you two standing there foolishly for? Don't tell me you're going to be merciful to someone who barged into the headquarters? Why aren't you attacking yet? Capture him first. When they received the news just now, didn't they say that this intruder's divine sense was already under control? Why did it look like that's right?" Qin Ao couldn't resist sneering. The other party was a high-level talisman practitioner. He just didn't know who would emerge victorious between her and Grandmaster Yi. Eldest young Sir Qin glanced at Qin Ao with a troubled expression. "Second uncle, the little stoic is challenging Grandmaster Yi, so it's best if we don't interfere. Let's wait for them to finish their fight first." Qin Ao was instantly enraged, and he turned to glare fiercely at the eldest young Sir. "Are you?" A sudden clap of thunder made him jump in fright, and Qin Ao's curses were instantly swallowed back into his throat. When he looked back, he saw that Grandmaster Ye's head had been cleaved by the thunderclap sword. Although he used many defensive spirit tools to block it, Grandmaster Yi had also set up 2 layers of defensive talisman matrices around him. However, a flower of blood still blossomed mercilessly from the little stoic's attack. Qin Ao roared in anger, "Quick, someone come quickly and treat Grandmaster Yi. You guys." Qin Ao held back his anger and pointed at De Guling, 7 flowers, and the rest who were standing motionlessly in front of him. "Are you all dead?" These people were actually enjoying the show and didn't mind blowing things up. All of them retreated far away, leaving an empty space in the center, allowing that stoic-faced little crown princess to do as she pleased. He didn't interfere or make a move. He just watched silently. Since when did their Heavenly Fate headquarters have so many onlookers? "You're too weak," Arbor said coldly. "If you hadn't used Luo He as a bait to create a life-ending charm, my Mo Yi wouldn't have been killed by you. I'm going to kill you now to avenge my friend. Do you agree?" Everyone looked at the guy in front of them with a dumbfounded expression. Grandmaster Yi was dumbfounded and speechless. When the little stoic asked this question, she was especially serious, and her eyes revealed a bit of heavy fury. Eldest young Sir Qin's mouth twitched, and he hastily covered his handsome face with his fan. Actually, it would have been better if the little stoic didn't ask. Which idiot would agree to someone else killing them? Unless their brain was damaged. Since you don't have any objections, then eat one of my charms as well. A cold glint flitted through the little stoic's eyes, and she suddenly waved her hand. "I came back late today, so I didn't have time to edit a portion of the content. I'll post it together tomorrow after editing it." Ah. Chapter 55:17. A streak of golden light instantly drilled into Great Master Yi. "Be careful," Qin Ao hastily shouted. But right now, Qin Xian and the others were all standing there as spectators. None of them would help. Even if Qin Ao dared to rush up, she didn't dare to casually receive a talisman of unknown origin. Hence, she could only stand there and shout, "Be careful." The talisman flew toward Yi Weiqing at the speed of light in a split second. Yi Weiqing's lips curled as he formed talisman seals with both hands. His robes rapidly swayed as he rapidly blocked the talisman rushing toward him. Everyone only saw defensive talismans being thrown in front of Yi Weiqing, simultaneously blocking the other party's torrential curse power. For defensive talismans in succession seemed to block that torrential curse power. However, the little stoic extended 2 slender fingers. Her robes fluttered, and her eyes were cold as she casually drew talismans floating with golden light in the air. She softly said, "Go," and streaks of unknown talismans as thin as leaves broke through the other party's defensive talisman matrix with a whoosh and mercilessly rushed between Yi Weiqing's brows. Soul-seizing talisman. The instant the talisman entered Yi Weiqing's body, his mind instantly reacted. The legendary saint-rank soul-seizing talisman? And it was even a saint-rank soul-seizing talisman drawn out of thin air. Was this kind of monstrously talented disciple specially born by the heavens to ridicule the mediocrity of all living things? The power of soul-seizing was quite enormous, especially since the other party drew more than one soul-seizing talisman. After 3 soul-seizing talismans fell, Yi Weisheng spat out a mouthful of blood and collapsed to the ground. Arbor held Thunderclap in one hand as he withdrew his talisman, drawing in the air. He coldly stared at Yi Weisheng on the ground. Seal. The little stoic clenched her hand into a fist and drew a sealing talisman in the direction of a flowing talisman to her left, directly sealing Yi Weisheng's hastily fleeing soul in her hand. Accompany my MO in death. Even if I cut you into 1,000 pieces, it won't be enough to dispel the hatred in my heart. Arbor stared at the ball of ghostly fire in his left hand and sneered, directly throwing him into the stronghold's pagoda of punishment. Others naturally didn't know and only thought that she sealed Yi Weisheng's soul and stuffed it into her personal storage talisman. Qin Ao pointed at Arbor and shouted in fury, You. He was truly too audacious. Not only did this woman barge into the Tianyun headquarters alone, she even brazenly killed Qin Hong and Yi Weisheng. Take him down. Qin Ao roared with a cold face. The surroundings were as silent as chickens. Everyone looked at each other, but no one moved. Qin Ao was even more furious now. He glared angrily at Gong Songfeng, 7 Flowers, and the others. You guys, do you dare to openly defy the ancestors' orders? Take him down. 7 Flowers glanced at their eldest young master. Du Galing, Tang Quan, and Tang Li all looked at young master Omega Kotoku. Qin Ao was embarrassed. He had tried to take him down twice, but no one listened to him. Isn't this a fucking joke? Qin Xian, Qin Xan. Are you two trying to rebel? On behalf of the patriarch, I order the 2 of you to capture her. Now, immediately. Qin Ao roared angrily. As the angry roar fell, a large group of black-armored guards suddenly surged out from behind Qin Ao, roaring as they quickly surrounded him. Qin Ao's expression eased slightly. Finally, he didn't have to put on a one-man show with this order. There was some reaction from the back, which saved him from embarrassment. The black-armored guards swarmed forward in a fan-shaped formation, encircling the little stoic alone inside. Chapter 55-18. Arbor expressionlessly looked ahead, his icy gaze moving past them inch by inch. The black-armored guards were wrapped in layers of black armor and black scarves, so their true appearances couldn't be seen. However, Arbor could clearly sense from the aura exuding from these people that they probably hadn't mutated. It could be seen that the forces in Tianyun's hands weren't all zombie armies. Zhao Qiran glanced at Arbor with a complicated expression before slowly lowering her head. The little stoic small face was cold as she emotionlessly watched the several hundred weapons aimed at her. She slowly took a step forward. The fan-shaped encirclement couldn't help but simultaneously take a step back. When she took another step forward, the group of black-armored guards couldn't help but take another step back. Until Qin Ao angrily roared, "What are you retreating for? Stand firm. None of you are allowed to retreat, do you hear me?" The black-armored guards standing in the front row couldn't help but tremble slightly with their weapons. If the little stoic took another step forward, she would inevitably bump into the sharp weapons in their hands. At that time, this little stoic crown princess would probably be injured, and none of them would have a good ending. "Do you think I won't recognize you just because you're hiding?" Arbor suddenly spoke, his tone extremely icy and resolute. "Look at all of you, your cultivations aren't ordinary. You must be the Long clan and Lin clan members who fled to Tianyun." Arbor's gaze swept around and landed on a person in the front row. "Mo Shikong, do you think I can't recognize who you are just because you're masked? You're too disappointing." Arbor's tone carried mockery as he said disdainfully, "Say, you're a grand prince who fled the capital to join Tianyun, but how come you can't even become a small ringleader? You're truly regressing as you live. You don't want to be a proper prince, but instead, you're a lackey who loves Tianyun. Shut up. Mo Shikong, whose identity was exposed by her, couldn't help but berate angrily. Mo Shikong was indeed standing among this group of black-armored soldiers. His face had a trace of depression as he stared at Arbor strangely. Arbor couldn't be bothered to tell him that even if his entire body was wrapped in that layer of black leather and his face was covered with 18 layers of veils, with her current eyesight, she would still be able to see him clearly. What a joke. He even hid his head and tail and stuffed himself into the black armor. Did he think that no one would recognize him? Wasn't it just some people from the aristocratic families of the 3 prefectures who sought refuge with the Heavenly Fate Empire and didn't want to show their faces? These people were really funny. They thought that once they came into contact with Tianyun, they would be able to reach the sky in a single bound. They didn't expect that even a person like Mo Shikong could only be a nominal little brother in Tianyun. Qin Ao pointed at Arbor and shouted angrily, "Why are you talking to her? Why aren't you taking him down? Do you want the ancestor to personally appear and instruct you on what to do?" Mo Shikong secretly gritted his teeth and took the lead to step forward with his sword. However, before the tip of his sword could even get close to the little face, a bolt of lightning and fire shot out from the side and chopped the sword in his hand into 2 with a whoosh. Qin Xian's face was cold as he suddenly reached out and grabbed Arbor's arm. Grabbing her, he entered through the central gate and headed straight for the inner city. Qin Ao was stunned and couldn't help but jump back and scold, "Qin Xian, you bastard. Are you really going to rebel? No wonder. Previously, there was news that said that you went to the Pingjin Prairie and destroyed all the lilies that the organization painstakingly cultivated." Qin Ao's gaze landed on the Omega Kotoku's finger. Chapter 55-19. The little stoic knitted her brows and turned to look at Qin Ao, who was cursing loudly, a chilly glint flitting across her eyes. The second young master was currently tightly grasping the little stoic's wrist and dragging her towards the inner city. He didn't even look back and completely ignored Qin Ao's cursing as he chased after them. Qin Ao couldn't conceal his agitation under his furious expression. The venerable ancestor was in need of people, yet Big Brother died inexplicably. Now, even Big Brother's stunningly talented son was walking on a path of no return. Then, was he the only one who could shoulder the responsibility for the future after Tianyun? Shouldn't he be the one in charge of all the operations? I thought you were creating rumors to stir up trouble, but I didn't expect that there's no smoke without fire. You greedy thing, you actually dare to betray the venerable ancestor for this woman? Qin Xian, stop right there. Are you listening to second uncle? Second uncle. Eldest young master Qin stopped him with a chuckle. Don't curse anymore. Second brother knows his limits. What limits could he possibly have? Didn't you see what he did just now? I told them to capture that damn stoic, but what happened in the end? Qin Xian actually interfered. He really doesn't respect the venerable ancestor. Qin Ao couldn't conceal his excitement. He glared fiercely at eldest young master Qin. Don't offend your younger brother. I must report this matter to the venerable ancestor. Right, report it now. Ha ha ha, Qin Xian, this rascal, actually courted death himself. That was truly great. He would overthrow him first, then drag eldest young master Qin down with him. Then, all the remaining power would be his, ha. After being illuminated by eldest brother's halo for so long, he finally had a chance to shine, ha ha ha. Pfft, eldest young master Qin looked at this second uncle of his, and he could practically discern his thoughts from his expression. This person was truly foolish. Qin Xian shook his head and closed the folding fan in his hand. He said with a grin, "Let's go." Fan Meng nodded and turned to look at Qin Ao, who was still secretly laughing. Young master, don't we need to deal with him? Second brother will deal with the aftermath of the trouble he caused. Eldest young master Qin waved his hand and said calmly, "We'll go where?" The eldest young master's footsteps paused slightly. If he boldly went to visit the little stoic at this time, he would probably be beaten out by second brother, right? Fan Meng lowered her head and gently bit her lower lip. Young master, do you think something will happen to the little stoic? What can happen to the little stoic? Eldest young Sir Chin pondered for a moment before saying, let's go to Crane Garden to take a look. Fan Meng quickly nodded. Just now, the second young master had fiercely dragged the little stoic away. Although the little stoic had a calm expression, why was it so worrisome? At this time, Omega Kotoku had already dragged the little stoic all the way back to Crane Garden where he was currently staying. The little stoic knitted her brows apathetically and forcefully swung her small hand, using all her strength to finally shake off the man's hand. What are you doing? She angrily roared, don't think that I can let you do whatever you want just because I don't have divine sense and my cultivation is not as good as yours. I'm telling you, if you dare. Chin Xian closed in on her and abruptly grabbed her slender wrist, glaring viciously at the woman in front of her. So, even if you're about to be beaten to death, you won't ask for help? You're the one who's going to be beaten to death. Chapter 55-20. Just now, when Chin Ao rushed over with his men and was surrounded by so many people, the little stoic didn't reveal the slightest intention of asking him for help. Even if there was only the slightest intention of asking for help, perhaps he wouldn't be so angry. The little stoic swung her hand irritably. I'm warning you, hurry and let go. And if I don't? An ominous glint appeared in the little stoic's eyes, and she kicked him. I'll kill you. Duge Ling saw this scene as soon as he stepped in. The second young master was kicked in the leg by the little demon god, and then several more times in succession. Duge Ling, I suddenly feel like I'm a bit redundant. I shouldn't appear now, so how do I deal with this? The two brothers, Tang Quan and Tang Li, crashed into Duge Ling's dumbstruck figure and pushed him into the door. Chin Xian was in the midst of a violent rage when she suddenly turned around and roared, all of you, scram. Arbor stomped on him angrily and abruptly took out a storage talisman with a wave of his hand. A glittering silver dagger flew out from it, and his eyes were fiendish. You son of a bitch, are you going to let go or not? The dagger slashed at the place where the two of them were holding hands. If this dagger slashed down, Chin Xian's 5 fingers would be broken, and the little stoic's wrist would also be broken. Duge Ling couldn't resist exclaiming, Stoic, calm down. However, Chin Xian let go first and turned around to avoid the dagger that she abruptly stabbed at him again. He raised his hand and directly swept it away. That dagger left a bloody mark on his palm. Chin Xian didn't feel the slightest bit of pain, but she felt like her heart was stabbed by something. She really didn't want to have the slightest bit of contact with him. Second young master. Duge Ling hastily ran forward and called out to Ouyang Su, who had just stepped in. Quick, Ouyang, quickly come and take a look at this injury. No need. Chin Xian brushed him aside indifferently, and her icy gaze landed on Arbor. She said word by word, you really don't want the Holywood fragment, your wisp of soul remembrance, is that it? The little stoic was startled, and then she sneered icily, would you be so kind as to give it to me? If you say, I won't believe anything you say. Arbor interrupted him mercilessly, the Holywood shard is my sole remembrance. Take it if you want. Even if it's destroyed, I won't even frown. You think I'm here to throw myself into a trap? Let me tell you. When the time comes, even if I have to self-destruct, I will drag you all down with me. Chin Xian stared at her blankly for a long time before she suddenly smiled. Arbor thought to himself, why is this smile so scary? His face was full of sorrow and desolation. If another woman who loved him saw this, she would probably be heartbroken. But not only did the little stoic not feel anything, she even felt that this person was especially pretentious. It was annoying to watch. What was going on with that expression of someone who had been deeply hurt by her and bullied to the point that he wished he could die? Wasn't he the one who had been pestering and annoying her all this time? She had already told him not to get close to her, not to get close to her. Did he not understand human language? She already said that she didn't want to have anything to do with him in this lifetime. Arbor, have I ever told you that you're very heartless? When you're heartless, you're scarier than anyone else in this world. You've said it now, the little stoic said expressionlessly. Dugga Ling's heart couldn't help but tremble when he heard this. Yes, too heartless. Chapter 55-21. No matter who it was, they would not be able to say anything more heartless than Xiao Mu towards this picturesque second young master. The second young master suddenly pulled her in front of him, a light green glint appearing in his icy eyes. You're very good, Arbor. He grabbed her chin and enunciated each word clearly. I'll make you remember. Our matters, everything between us. I will use my own method to prove to you that no matter if it's that Mo Lien or that Duan Yu, none of them are as deeply in love with you as I am. You will understand, Arbor. You know that the entanglement between us isn't limited to this lifetime. After saying this, he ignored her resentful kicks and directly dragged this vexing little stoic into an empty room, personally locking the door behind him. When he turned around, he saw Dugga Ling's hesitant expression. What do you want to say? Young master, the little stoic, she is amenable to coaxing but not coercion. Amenable to coaxing but not coercion? No. You're wrong, this little thing clearly isn't amenable to coaxing or coercion. Young master Omega Kotoku sneered and sized him up. You seem to understand her very well. Seeing his unfriendly gaze, Ouyang Su hastily stepped forward and bowed in greeting. Young master, you should treat the wound on your hand first. The wound was bleeding non-stop. The blood flowed very slowly, but it gradually turned into a strange color. It was no longer crimson and seemed to have a few traces of dark green. The second young master sneered and bent down to lick the wound on his hand. It can heal itself. This was probably the benefit of mutating. His body was stronger than before, and he was probably the only one who knew the changes inside. Eldest young master. Two servants' whispers came from outside the door. Second young master said he won't see you today. Eldest young master, eldest young master. Qin Xian looked up and saw her elder brother waving the folding fan in his hand as he strode into the courtyard with a grin. The two servants guarding the door were knocked to the ground by Gong Songfeng's group. They looked terrified and didn't dare to make a sound. Stand down. Second young master Qin's apathetic gaze swept across the two servants who had collapsed on the ground, and he waved his hand indifferently. The two of them heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly retreated. Forcing them to stop, eldest young master Qin had already exhausted all of their courage. Now that he heard Omega Kotoku's words, he felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted off his shoulders. Eldest young Sir Qin crossed the threshold and scanned the courtyard. Where is she? You don't have to interfere in this matter, young master Omega Kotoku said coldly. Second brother, do you know what second uncle said before he left? Eldest young Sir Qin rolled his eyes in exasperation. He said that he was going to report you to Ancestor. What time is it now? You still have the mood to stay here leisurely. Why don't you hurry up and take a look in front of the Ancestor and see what nonsense second uncle said? Humph, the old Ancestor is still in closed-door cultivation. He doesn't have the chance to talk nonsense, Qin Xian said coldly. Eldest young master Qin was strolling in the courtyard. Where's Jojo? I told her about this matter. Eldest young Sir Qin floated to the second young master with a swish and looked at him carefully and seriously. Second brother, you've interacted with the little stoic quite a bit, so you should know what kind of explosive temper she has, right? If you really plan to use force, I'm afraid she'll fight to the death with you and make you lose both your woman and wealth. Young master Omega Kotoku pursed his lips and stared coldly at his elder brother. He said coldly, I know my limits. Chapter 55-22. What sense of propriety do you have? Look at how your eyes are burning with fury. Aren't you just adding fuel to the fire by confronting her like this? Eldest young Sir Qin waved his folding fan and blocked Qin Xian. How about you let me have a good talk with the little stoic? You're strong, but she's stronger. She won't submit to you. Besides, you need to go take care of second uncle's matters. You don't really want him to report you to the venerable Ancestor and make you unable to turn back, right? Besides, don't you need to explain to the venerable ancestor about father's death? Qin Xian's handsome face was cold, and he left without looking back. Where's Qin Ao? Eldest young Sir Qin couldn't resist rolling his eyes when he saw him leave like this. He looked around the court and said, "Go look for him." 7 flowers quickly dashed out. Du Galing was about to stop him when Fan Meng reached out to stop him. She said aloofly, "Even second young sir didn't stop our eldest young sir, so why are you stopping him?" Soon, red clothes and green clothes arrived together, and they glanced at the people present with odd expressions. "Speak frankly." Eldest young Sir Qin knitted his brows. Could it be that they couldn't find the little stoic in the court? That was impossible. Second brother had dragged her all the way back, so he must have thrown her into the guest room and locked her up. He had red clothes and the others look around, so how could they not find her? Red clothes was speechless, and he coughed lightly before saying, "She's in the wing room over there. But she seems to have fallen asleep." Eldest young Sir Qin, they were still worried and ran over to take a look. Looking in through the caltrop flower window, they saw the little stoic lying down in her clothes, wrapping herself up like a cicada pupa. Her entire body was curled up in the blankets, and only her clean small face was exposed. She was still expressionless as she slept, and the muslin curtains that drooped to the ground undulated slightly in the wind outside the window. Eldest young Sir Qin couldn't resist rolling his eyes. Royal guards. 2 black armored guards jumped down from the other side of the window with a whoosh. These 2 people were actually quite speechless when the second young sir arranged for them to watch over the little stoic here. They thought that this little crown princess would definitely kick up a fuss and jump up and down after being captured and locked in a room. Who would have expected as soon as he entered the room, he began to make the bed. Then, he rolled onto it and went to sleep. The 2 of them hadn't told the second young master about the commotion outside and the little stoic sleeping. Hong Yi looked at eldest young master helplessly. "Young master, should we wake her up for a chat? What kind of creature was this? She was actually able to sleep in the enemy's base camp after being locked up in a room by the enemy. Wasn't this ambition a little too big?" Eldest young Sir Qin glanced at her through the window and waved his hand, saying, "Let her sleep. Let's go sit in the forecourt for a while." Everyone was speechless. Was this stoic person a hostage or an honored guest? Arbor hadn't fallen asleep at all. She knew that eldest young Master Qin and the others had been strolling around and chatting outside the window. She pretended to turn her back to the window and used her divine sense to communicate with the sapling. "Chocho, there's always someone guarding outside. Why did you let Tao Hua and the rest out without anyone noticing?" "Master, you can ask Venerable Peach Blossom, Feng Changqing, and the others to use a transformation talisman to transform into a small animal or something. Then, you can sneak out." That won't do. Arbor hastily vetoed. Although their movements wouldn't seem to be restricted if they transformed into an animal and ran out, it wouldn't be easy to take away even if they found the sapling's fragment and her soul remembrance. After all, the transformation talisman's duration was still very long. Chapter 55-23. If she became a defenseless animal, wouldn't she be at the mercy of others? No. It was better not to harm them. Then, Chucho, go knock out the 2 people outside. Arbor hastily stopped her. "We can't alert the enemy. Wait first." She hadn't even seen that important and mysterious hall master of the talisman incantation hall. She had to think of a way to meet this person. According to Qin Xian and Qin Xian, the biggest leader behind the Tianyun Empire should be that patriarch. Who exactly was this patriarch? He had never shown his face from beginning to end. She had infiltrated the enemy's ranks now to figure out the ins and outs of these people. Even if she couldn't catch all of them in one fell swoop, she had to at least figure out who this patriarch was. "Chocho, tell Rotten Peach Blossom and the others to calm down. Don't come out until the right time." Chocho stammered for a while. "They're a little unsettled, Master. Chocho can only do my best to dissuade them." Especially when Mo Shikong and the others had surrounded Little Master earlier, esteemed peach blossom divinity had almost jumped out. If not for Chiuchio's sharp eyes and quick hands stopping her in time, her identity would have been exposed long ago and the Tianyan Empire would know that Masta's conscience had never been sealed. Arbor considered for a while. Chiuchio, if I directly mention that I want to meet their patriarch, how confident do you think I will be? Chiuchio said righteously, Masta, His Highness the Crown Prince told you not to act alone. Chiuchio thinks that you should be obedient. Calm down first. When His Highness the Crown Prince and the others attack the city and gather, you'll definitely see who the Tianyun Patriarch is. Masta, Chiuchio, I beg you, quickly rein in your curiosity. Arbor snorted and didn't say anything else. On the other side, Zhao Qiran walked into Crane Garden's courtyard and saw eldest young Sir Qin sitting under a flowering tree in the courtyard, flipping through a book. The sunlight was just right. White steam rose from a teacup in front of eldest young Sir Qin, and he was holding a book. He truly looked like a picturesque beauty. Zhao Qiran walked up and bowed. The two people who followed behind her hurriedly bowed to eldest young Sir Qin as well. Eldest young Sir Qin raised his head to glance at them. Miss Ran has arrived, but second brother isn't here right now. Zhao Qiran smiled faintly. Ran didn't come to find second young master. Please forgive me, eldest young master. Ran still has matters to attend to. Please excuse me. Eldest young master Qin raised his chin slightly. Fan Meng's figure flashed and appeared in front of her. May I know what Miss Ran wants? Zhao Qiran was neither servile nor overbearing. This subordinate is here on second master's orders to bring him back. Fan Meng stopped her and said indifferently, there's no need for that. Miss Ran, please go back. Young master, the person is in second young master's court. If I want to take him away, I don't think I need your permission. Zhao Qiran, that person was left in the courtyard by our second young master. You can't have that person just because you want it. Dugu Ling couldn't help but interject. I have second master's warrant. Zhao Qiran took out an iron tablet from her pocket and showed it to everyone. Second master is also here on Patriarch's orders to bring him back. If eldest young master doesn't believe me, you can go ask Patriarch. Zhao Qiran's expression was serene, as if she didn't care about everyone's obstruction at all. She was very confident that no one could refuse her request to bring someone back once this iron tablet was issued. This was indeed the transmission token that Patriarch had given second master. Chapter 55-24. Dugu Ling's gaze chilled. The second young master was the one who brought them back, so no one could recklessly come to the second young master's court to take them away. That would be openly slapping the second young master's face. Not even Omega Kotoku or the venerable ancestor. Long Min, Long Chong, Zhao Qiran said aloofly. Search them. The youth named Long Chong looked up, unable to conceal the perverted excitement in his eyes. Dugu Ling said coldly, trespassers of Crane Garden, die. As soon as he finished speaking, Tang Quan, Tang Li, and a group of experts jumped down from the rooftops and surrounded Long Min, Long Chong, and the others with cold gazes. Long Min was alarmed and hastily tugged at her younger brother, indicating for him not to act rashly. Long Min was a smart person. Although she was very displeased with that stoic face for harming her Long family to this extent, she still considered the pros and cons. But at least she knew how to weigh the pros and cons in front of her. She knew when to make a move and when to pretend to be a coward. Zhao Qiran came to bring them back on the venerable ancestor's orders, but the problem was that the second young master's subordinates were not to be trifled with. There were no less than a dozen Transcendence Realm experts here. How could they possibly deal with them? Zhao Qiran coldly stared at Dugu Ling's group and said word by word, Young Master Dugu, you can't be thinking of becoming enemies with the entire Tianyun, right? Sir Jojo was lying on the bed and could vaguely hear the commotion coming from the front courtyard. However, with her personality of not moving if she could, she truly couldn't be bothered to care. Perhaps there was internal strife in Tianyun? Previously, she saw that eldest Qin Omega Kotoku's second uncle didn't seem to be a good person. He didn't seem to get along with the two Zither young masters. Furthermore, they didn't seem to be on good terms with each other, whether it was the flying heaven, burrowing earth, or the star-picking hull. If she could infiltrate the enemy's ranks and cause them to fall apart, then things would probably be much easier to handle. A strange fragrance suddenly wafted into the little stoic's nose, causing her nose to twitch involuntarily. This smell seemed to be the special poisonous powder on Ding Ting Ding's body. That's right, this person carried poison from head to toe and had an innate strange fragrance that fused with the fire Qilan Fanged snake's poison. Sir Jojo couldn't move. At this moment, other than her mind being especially clear-headed, her limbs were a bit numb, and it was very strenuous to move them. A faint sigh appeared beside her. I just knew that you little imp was pretending. A slender index finger poked the little stoic's forehead. I'm guessing that your conscious pool wasn't sealed at all. Don't be in a hurry to recruit people. I just want to talk to you for a while. Just a few words. Young Master Long turned around and sat down on the edge of the bed. I'll leave after you answer my questions. If you don't want to see me, I'll never appear in front of you again. Facial paralysis. If I hadn't approached you in a joking manner, teased you, and unintentionally hurt your mother, would you have treated me better? He said softly as his gaze fell on her face. If only he hadn't sent out that invader's challenge letter back then. Then he wouldn't have met her. Or, if they had met in another way, would the ending have been better? Arbor was stunned. His dark eyes were filled with a ferocious light. How could there be so many ifs? If possible, he really didn't want to meet these people. Troublesome. When I met you in the Mystic Beast Forest, you were under some kind of curse, right? Long Yun smiled bitterly at him. After that, you completely lost this memory, right? Chapter 55-25. The little stoic's small face was cold. She opened her small mouth and spat out, nonsense. Don't be so stubborn. Long Yun looked at her and sighed. You don't remember when my mother sent the North Altar Protector to kill you, right? Ding Xian was simply a lunatic. So she had once tried to kill her in the Mystic Beast Forest. How could the two of them have any interactions at that time? She only sent some protector to kill her. Most importantly, Sir Jojo. She actually knew nothing about this matter. Your mother is an abnormal person, the little stoic coldly said. She then knitted her brows and stared at young Sir Long. She asked uncertainly, she thinks I stole her son, right? I heard that there's a type of woman who raises a child by herself and has an abnormal desire to control their child. I always felt that your mother's mental state wasn't too normal. It must be so. Long Yun, my mother was poisoned by that vicious woman from the Long family with the passion-severing poison. I've been carrying this poison since I was a fetus. Arbor couldn't help but be enraged. I didn't do it either. What right does your mother have to do this to me? Her mental illness is acting up and she doesn't like anyone. Long Yun, why do I freaking feel that talking to you is so tiring? Can't you think about what the symptoms of the passion-severing poison are? You're such a blockhead that you can't even understand. Inside the star domain, Venerable Peach Blossom and Feng Chongqing, who were desperately stopped by Qiuqiu to make them listen to Sir Jojo's orders, silently looked at each other. Murong Sun couldn't resist covering her eyes and muttering to herself, it's still that punk who's two-faced and knows how to strike first to gain the upper hand. Otherwise, with her disciple's adorably slow-witted personality and slow comprehension of emotions, let alone having a child, she probably wouldn't even have a partner right now. What are you doing here? The door to the room was kicked open, and Qin Xian quickly entered with a cold expression. When he saw Xiaolian looking at him with a paralyzed face, he didn't know why, but he actually heaved a sigh of relief. She was really worried that Long Yun would act recklessly. It was said that as long as the source of the love-severing poison was eliminated, he would slowly return to a peaceful life. Thinking about it, once the love-severing poison entered the body, it would be like being cut by 1,000 knives and 10,000 ants gnawing at one's heart. As long as the root, Jojo, was eliminated, time would dilute all feelings. This was why Ding Xian wanted to kill Xiaomu back then. It was just that she did not understand why this Charles was talking to Long Yun like a chicken talking to a duck. She felt that it was funny and sad at the same time. You go out first. I have something to say to Jojo, the second son said coldly. Long Yun glanced at Duga Ling, who was standing at the door, and walked out with a sneer. Omega Kotoku, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't get him far away. He came back too quickly. It could be seen that even if this person went out to do something, he didn't just place 2 spies outside the door. To be able to rush back as soon as he received the news, this person cared more about Arbor than he showed. Seeing that Long Yun had left, young Master Omega Kotoku flicked his sleeves and closed the door. With a raise of his hand, a light yellow sapling floated above his palm. Jojo, how about we discuss a business deal? Chocho immediately exploded with joy in the little stoic's conscience. Master, it's our family's little 7. It's little 7 without a doubt. Look at her, she's so pitiful and drooping. She's been ridiculously ravaged by someone. I received news that Sikong Fuling will lead people to set fire to Duan Yu's camp tonight. Chapter 55-26. Rewind time to 30 minutes ago. The Qin estate's second master had just led a group of people to the patriarch's place of seclusion, but the moment he left his residence, he was surrounded by Qin Xian and his men. Qin Ao's expression froze, and he subconsciously took a step back. Pointing at Qin Xian, he angrily said, Qin Xian, you brought so many people here. Do you really want to completely break off relations with our Tianyun? Qin Xian didn't waste time talking nonsense with him. With a wave of his hand, a short and stout man holding a purple gold hammer chuckled and rushed forward with several dozen subordinates. The crowd directly waved the weapons in their hands, and all the shrimp soldiers and crab generals around Omega Kotoku fell to the ground. Qin Ao's expression changed. Seeing the one-sided situation, he couldn't help but shout hoarsely, Qin Xian, you disgraceful scoundrel. Previously, you looked on helplessly as your father was beaten to death, but you didn't stop it. And now you want to kill your second uncle. But before he could finish his sentence, his pupils suddenly shrank. Young Master Omega Kotoku suddenly flashed in front of him at an extremely terrifying speed. 5 fingers that seemed fair but were actually as hard as iron suddenly grasped his throat. In an instant, Qin Ao's bellyful of words were all stuck in his throat, and he couldn't clamor anymore. Previously, Qin Xian had rushed to Omega Kotoku's residence after leaving Crane Garden's gate. Because he knew that his elder brother was right. If he didn't take advantage of this time to control this troublemaking second uncle, he might really complain to the patriarch and accuse him to death. Of course, he wasn't afraid of this person going to complain. Capable people, no matter what kind of storm they face, can still remain indifferent. For example, right now. This second uncle, who was jumping up and down, was like a pheasant struggling on its deathbed when his neck was grabbed. He had no ability to resist at all. The second young master had always been disdainful of people who weren't on the same level as him. It was as easy as flipping his hand for him to pinch this noisy second uncle to death. Qin Ao's pupils shrank in disbelief. Now that his life was in the other party's hands, it was extremely difficult for him to concentrate and focus his gaze on the second young master. He really wanted to beg, but unfortunately, his neck was being held, and he couldn't even make a simple sound. Qin Ao was astonished. He probably didn't expect that his nephew would attack him right under the nose of the Heavenly Fate Patriarch. Only now did he finally understand that there seemed to be nothing in this world that could restrain this second young master. Even that famous ancestor of theirs didn't seem to be a supreme existence in the eyes of the second young master. His eyes, the 2 jade-green springs were like rippling emerald lakes. Qin Ao's eyes widened in fright as he stared at Qin Xian, who was looking at him from a short distance away in astonishment. A loud sound came from his throat. Second uncle, if you're willing to tuck your tail between your legs and behave yourself, I don't mind taking care of you when you're old. The cold voice of the Omega Kotoku rang in Qin Ao's ears. It was as if the bell of death had rung for him. Chin Ao couldn't help but tremble from head to toe in shock. Chin Ao really wanted to open his mouth and ask him what he meant. He even wanted to kneel down and beg for mercy, but soon, he knew that he would never have such an opportunity in this lifetime. Chapter 55:27. The last sound he clearly heard was the crisp sound of his neck bone breaking. Then? There was no then. The second young master loosened his fingers and glanced indifferently at his white jade-like fingers. He heard the muffled sound of Chin Ao's corpse falling to the ground. The second young master didn't even look at this second uncle, as if the life he took wasn't his blood-related second uncle's life. And it was merely an insignificant ant on the side of the street. The plump man holding the purple gold hammer chuckled mischievously while rubbing the back of his head. He bowed to the second young master and then waved his hand, ordering people to drag Chin Ao's corpse outside. As for how to deal with it, his subordinates would handle it. This Chin Ao normally relied on the venerable ancestor's support and truly jumped up and down without a care in the world. On his deathbed, he should be able to understand a principle. It was useless no matter who looked after him. He was a weakling and would be crushed by others wherever he went. What a pitiful man. The young master of Omega Kotoku collected his chaotic thoughts. His gaze landed on the little stoic, and he lifted his hand to help her sit up. On his left palm, a wilted sapling was currently bending at an inconceivable degree, its branches coyly extending toward the little stoic. Chin Xian raised her hand slightly and allowed that crooked and ugly sapling to hop onto Arbor's body. Arbor was somewhat surprised and glanced at Chin Xian. She indeed didn't expect that Chin Xian would hand over the sapling's final shard to her just like this. Someone had previously fed this shard with blood and forced it to produce a semi-finished holy fruit. It was currently severely injured. It would be best to immediately store it into the star domain and let the sapling's main body nourish it. However, the Omega Kotoku was sitting here, so it naturally wasn't suitable to do this. Arbor knitted her brows and pondered in her heart. That bastard Longyun had already seen through her conscience not being sealed. She wondered if he would inform Chin Xian of this. Forget it, she would just take one step at a time. Arbor stared at him for a while. His fingers twitched slightly, and he let out a sigh of relief. It seemed that Longyun's special ability, poison, could only make her body weak for a while and could not lock her movements for a long time. Thank goodness, thank goodness. Otherwise, I would have fallen into this vile person's trap. Sir Jojo used a bit of strength to adjust his body slightly. At the same time, the wilted sapling had already jumped onto Charles' shoulder. In a very human-like manner, he peeked out from behind her neck and sneakily glanced at the Omega Kotoku. Chin Xian glanced over indifferently. The sapling immediately became terrified and hid in Arbor's waterfall like black silk, wishing that it could immediately merge with its master. Little Ball pitifully wiped his tears in the star domain. Master, our little seven is too pitiful. Why don't you keep it in your storage talisman first? Arbor raised his left hand with difficulty, straightened his body, and asked expressionlessly, "What do you want to do by telling me this?" "I want to work with you." "Don't you hate the heavenly fortune?" "What a coincidence, I've actually long been tired of this organization. I can work with you and help you completely destroy it." "But you," Chin Xian suddenly grabbed her hand. "Promise me, let us return to the past, okay?" Arbor looked at him with a stunned expression. Was this person possessed by a demon? Chapter 55:28. What nonsense are you talking about? Go back, how do I go back, what do I take back? Chin Xian. Do you still remember? When I carried you out of the dark dungeon, when I carried you out, you looked at me, didn't you? Arbor's whole body trembled, even if it was a long time ago, she was no longer the same person. But every time she thought of the past, she would always feel a bit of fear. She struggled to pull her hand out, angrily glaring at the person in front of her. Chin Xian did not notice her angry expression, nor did he notice that her hand had already been pulled away. He continued to recall the past, as if intoxicated by the memories, unable to extricate himself. He grasped the air, muttering to himself, "Xiao Qiao, it's okay if you don't remember, I can tell you bit by bit. When I carried you out of the dungeon, not only did you look at me, you also opened your mouth and said your first words to me. Thank you. You said thank you to me, do you still remember?" Arbor's movements were not very nimble, but she still instinctively shrank her body, trying to avoid contact with this lunatic in front of her. Yes, she felt like this Omega Kotoku was crazy. His mouth was full of nonsense, inexplicable. What time was it now? She was already married, living so well, she even had a child. Was he crazy? Inexplicably talking about the past with her, or the messy past of her previous life, she did not want to recall the things from the beginning. This person was as stubborn and unreasonable as always. In his heart, he was always thinking about himself, never thinking about other people. If it was Jojo's lotus, she would definitely not force Jojo like this. "Xiao Qiao, if you don't say anything, I'll take it that you agree." Qin Xian suddenly reached out to grab her shoulder, shaking it a bit, his eyes flashing with an abnormal flame. Xiaomu simply did not have time to say anything before she saw this man walking out in a huff. "I'll go make arrangements right now. Don't worry, it won't be long before everything you want will be realized." Arbor tried to raise her hand, trying for about a quarter of an hour, then suddenly clenched it into a fist. "Rotten peach blossoms, come out quickly." In a flash, Hu Jinshan appeared in front of her. "Jojo, it's too dangerous here. You should follow me back to the star field and hide for a while." Looking at Omega Kotoku's reaction just now, he was simply crazy. He couldn't leave Jojo in such a dangerous place again. When the Crown Prince attacked, they would then coordinate with him from the inside. That would be more appropriate. Arbor blinked. "You and Mayan, help me find soul remembrance." "I'll stay here for the time being," Arbor hurriedly interrupted Mayanshan's words and tugged at his sleeve. "If that pervert takes another step forward, I will immediately return to the star field." The venerable peach blossom divinity was a bit worried and stared at her little stoic face. "I think he's a bit crazy. I can't be at ease leaving you here alone." Arbor pursed his lips. "He is indeed a lunatic, but no matter how crazy he is, he won't kill me. He still wants to go back to the past with me. If he kills me, everything will be gone. At most, he'll cripple my arms and legs." Arbor suddenly realized with a start that she seemed to have said something strange, and her small face instantly paled. "Jojo." Hu Jinshan furrowed his brows and hurriedly reached out to pull her. "What's wrong?" Me? She actually said something like that just now. Why would she say Omega Kotoku crippled her arms and legs? Strange. Chapter 55-29. His mood immediately tensed up because of this. What nonsense was he spouting? Arbor blinked and tugged at Peach Blossom. "Go quickly. Since you're here, if you can't find my soul remembrance, it'll be a loss." Seeing him stare at him without moving, Arbor couldn't help but sigh helplessly. He took out a pill from his pouch and sniffed it. "Look, I still have this Saint Rank body forging pill. If he were to go crazy and break my limbs, then I would be able to reforge my bones and regenerate them without any effort." Jichen looked at her helplessly. This girl had been like this since the first day he met her. She had a deadpan expression and said ridiculous things that weren't funny at all. After Holy Sun Mi Yen came out, he glanced outside the window. There was no one outside at the moment. The guards arranged by Omega Kotoku had already been taken down by Long Yun. They would probably arrange for someone to come over later. "Go quickly, you two. Be careful," Ji Chen and Jojo said in unison and looked at each other. Venerable Peach Blossom tugged at Holy Sun Mi Yen and the two quickly left. Arbor stared at the bone-forging pill in his hand for a long time and suddenly asked, after eating it, "When will the effects take effect?" "It can be suppressed for 3 days at most," the little treant said weakly. Xiaomu had Chucho stealthily drag Fragment Little Seven's frail body back before saying, "Then I'll eat it." Master, if you take it, there's no turning back. Chocho hurriedly added, aren't you afraid of pain? I have to overcome whatever I'm afraid of. Otherwise, I'll be troubled for the rest of my life. Arbor calmly threw the pill into his mouth. The saint-rank pill melted in his mouth without feeling anything. Chocho was now full of stars in the star domain. Master, I think you're really, really great. Sikong Fuling truly hadn't expected that she would become the vanguard of the Heavenly Fate army and lead several thousand harpies to launch a sneak attack on the Tsangzhou barracks. But since this was her big brother's order, she could only do as he said. In the middle of the night, according to the original plan, she was leading a group of harpies to attack the Tsang prefecture camp. Who would have thought that they would be greeted by the bombardment of the god stone cannon? The one leading the team was none other than Mu Xingchen. Sikong Fuling had a slight headache looking at this, but she still proceeded according to the plan in an orderly manner. So the Tsangzhou emperor had already received the news and knew that they would attack at night? Very good. Sikong Fuling raised her hand and waved. The eagle-bodied crowd that had been following her in an orderly manner suddenly let out hoarse roars. Standing in front of the big tent, he calmly looked at the two people in the distant sky. He couldn't help but frown slightly. Duan Yu raised his hand indifferently. Immediately, thousands of god-tier masters leaped forward and formed a defensive wall under the cover of the defensive glyph formation. At the same time, that group of harpies suddenly ignited with raging flames, and they plummeted from the sky one after another. Duan Yu curled his lips and said apathetically, "It's truly surprising that Sikong Fuling would take the lead. I thought that if she and her brother were smart enough, they would hide behind the Heavenly Fate army and wait for them to make the first move." Chapter 55-30. I didn't expect it. Sikong Fuling is actually the first to come. Duan Yu couldn't resist shaking his head. The numerous burning harpies swooped down from the sky and transformed themselves into large fireballs. They burned themselves and threw themselves into the camp. They actually used such a tragic method to attack them, foolishly sacrificing themselves to kill 1,000 enemies. Get into formation. Rong Qing, who was standing at the front, calmly ordered. The large group of elites from the three provinces had long become accustomed to cooperating with each other after long periods of training. All he needed to do was give the order, and all the positions and coordination would fall into place. A large-scale defensive formation was erected around the camp in a matter of minutes. No matter how many fireballs the harpies rained down from above, it was to no avail. These attacks were all blocked by everyone's defensive formation. Boom! At the same time, an earth-shattering explosion came from behind them. Hui Feng and the others' expressions changed. When they turned around, they saw Prince Mo flying towards that rapidly descending figure. Soon, Duan Yu also flew over. The three figures were as fast as shooting stars, and it didn't take them long to reach a mountain range near the kingdom of Qingzhou. Vassal Prince Rong knitted his brows and said aloofly, "Ignore them. Get into formation and continue exterminating the harpies." With His Majesty and the Crown Prince of the Divine Province's cultivation levels, they would definitely succeed if they joined hands. Rong Qing had already seen who the newcomers were with a startling glance just now. Although the current master of the Sea of Forgetfulness was very formidable, he couldn't possibly be a match for those two. Sikong Fuling could also clearly see her elder brother being chased away by those two from Tsangzhou and the Divine Province. She was a bit worried and reflexively clenched her fists. She had to break out of here as soon as possible and then rendezvous with her elder brother. Mu Xingchen stood at the front of the crowd and was currently gazing at the dense crowd of harpies in the sky. He clenched his fingers and made a hand gesture. The divine stone cannons lined up behind him started a new round of bombardment. Young Master Mu. Qi Ba raised his hand, and two Godrealm cannoneers quickly trotted over, pushing two extraordinary sacred stone cannons whose muzzles were forged from pure black crystals. Mu Xingchen's pupils contracted, and his gaze landed on these two sacred stone cannons. The power of the Saint's stone cannon was far beyond that of the divine stone cannon. If this cannon were to land, it was likely that the half-harpy would vanish into thin air. Then Sikong Fuling, Mu Xingqian's heart was filled with mixed feelings. This young lady in front of him was really a pity. 8th young Master Qi did not notice Mu Xingqian's expression. Of course, even if he discovered something, he wouldn't say much. Everything had to go according to the plan. Once someone attacked their camp, what awaited them was death and a baptism of blood. These 2 holy stone cannons were the only gifts brought by the crown prince of the divine land. They were specially prepared for these rascals. Speaking of which, the crown prince of the divine land was really surprising and exciting. He still remembered that when His Majesty saw this big gift, his eyes couldn't help but light up. The holy stone cannon was a divine weapon secretly refined by the crown prince of Shenzhou. At that time, His Majesty's eyes were probably saying, "This thing is so awesome." Boom! Rumble. The 2 Saint Stone cannons aimed at the sky and fired for the first time in history. Sikong Fuling's expression abruptly changed, and she immediately pulled 3 harpies to block in front of her. Chapter 55-31. Sikong Fuling's body involuntarily fell, and she stomped on the ground. When she landed, the 3 harpies who were hit by the shrapnel from the holy stone cannon were reduced to cannon fodder and were reduced to ashes before her eyes. Sikong Fuling's expression changed instantly, and she looked at Mu Xingqian, who was standing at the front of the crowd, with a complicated expression. "Mu Xingqian, I didn't expect that you and I would meet in the end." Mu Xingqian nodded. "Miss Sikong, you have your position, and I have mine. Unfortunately, we are still on opposing sides." Actually, he didn't understand either. The River of Forgetfulness could clearly remain neutral and watch from afar, not even interfering in this matter. This was originally a battle between the 3 states and the Heavenly Providence. Why would the River of Forgetfulness interfere? Wasn't this especially strange? Sikong Fuling stared at him with a somewhat complicated gaze. "Mu Xingqian, you are a good person. Unfortunately, I have no choice." Mu Xingqian, who was inexplicably labeled as a good person, glanced indifferently at Sikong Fuling. "Miss Sikong, you really have no choice. Actually, you made your choice long ago." "I can't say anything. Actually, everyone is the same. If it were me today, I would also stand in the same position and help my younger sister." So Sikong Fuling stood by Long Yun's side and helped her elder brother without hesitation. To put it bluntly, there was nothing wrong with that. It was really just a difference in their standpoints. My elder brother, he actually didn't want to join the Heavenly Providence. He did this. I kind of understand, but also don't. Sikong Fuling laughed self-deprecatingly. But so what? I'm already standing here, and there's no turning back. Mu Xingqian, if I die in this battle, I hope that one day, when you think of me, your heart won't be entirely filled with hatred and disappointment toward me. I hope that you can at least think about the predicament we were in the realm of misfortune that day. Mu Xingqian smiled faintly. Think about how you miserably evaded that black dragon. The 2 looked at each other and smiled. Sikong Fuling suddenly raised her hand, and mournful howls came from the air. Boom! Boom boom boom! The 2 Saint Stone cannons fired again without hesitation. Although each shot consumed a lot of Saint Stones, which made young Master Qi's heart bleed and his hands tremble slightly. But the effect, that's great. The fireballs of the harpies falling from the sky did not even have time to hit their defensive shields. With one shot, hundreds of fireballs immediately turned into ashes and dissipated into the air. The elites of the 3 prefectures, who were guarding the ground, held their breaths and waited quietly. When they saw the scene in front of them, they couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. Kill! With a stern shout, Mu Xingqian was the first to leap forward, the long sword in his hand slashing toward Sikong Fuling without any explanation. But Sikong Fuling abruptly jumped up and ran in the direction of the rear mountain like a madwoman. The battle on that side was actually more intense than here. Although Mo Lien was battling Long Yun alone, the earth quaked and the mountain swayed, causing the sun and moon to dim. As an onlooker, Darling Duan, you cheered for the crown prince from time to time while watching from the sidelines, for example. Do you need help? Say it earlier if you need help. Mo Lien, can you do it or not? If you can't, hurry and call me. Chapter 55-32. Aya, that was a good slap. Quick, quick, give him another stab. My heavens, Long Yun, you punk, you're too shameless. You actually used poison? Mo Lien, are you alright? Mo Lien was about to die from this guy's incessant chatter. She really wanted to ask, are you freaking not here to be more of a hindrance? Don't tell me you're possessed by malice and want me to perish together with Long Yun so that you can sit and reap the of the fisherman. Long Yun was also about to be annoyed to death by Duan Yu. This person was crazy, right? Every time he attacked, that guy would clamor from the side. Didn't he see that he was the one at a disadvantage? Why did he cheer when Mo Lien hit him, but he was unhappy when he hit Mo Lien? A pair of lunatics. He swung his hand to release a pair of heavenly birds, which swooped down to chase after Mo Lien. Mo Lien's eyes chilled, and she immediately summoned 7th Yen as well. At the same time, Duan Yu also hastily released his chestnut and pointed at the 2 heavenly birds in the distance. Hit, hit. The 8-tailed heavenly fox glanced at its master, unable to bear to look at it. It gave an irritated howl and pounced at one of the heavenly birds. Long Yun's expression was unsightly. Didn't you say you would just watch if you didn't attack? Duan Yu nodded seriously, and his beautiful peach blossom eyes blinked. I didn't attack. Aren't I still standing here? At the same time, Mo Lien took advantage of this opportunity to fling away Long Yun's hand with her sword, suddenly leaving a bloody gash on his arm. Blood gushed out and dripped down Long Yun's arm. In an instant, his gaze was incomparably malicious as he stared at Mo Lien and muttered to himself. In a split second, the enormous apparition of a fire Qilin fanged snake rose behind him. The snake's mouth was slightly open, and it fiercely flicked out its forked tongue, releasing a loud hiss. Mo Lien's gaze was chilly as she stood there unmoving. A pitch-black lotus flower appeared in his left palm. The moment the shadow of the fire Qilin fanged snake pressed down, the ink-colored lotus rose steadily and bloomed. Suddenly, as if it had come to life, it slightly twisted its leaves and scuttled over. Duan Yu's eyes brightened. This must be the ancient Mo Lien, right? There had always been a rumor that the crown prince of the divine land had inherited the power of the ancient Mo Lien, and his power was extraordinary. It was also his first time seeing the true appearance of the ancient Mo Lien. Powerful, powerful. Indeed, it was hard to find a match in this world. Mo Lien, this brat, with such a powerful force in his hands, was playing around with Long Yun from the beginning. It was really annoying. The leaves of the ancient black lotus suddenly shattered, and specks of black cold stars shot towards the fire Qilin fanged snake's phantom like meteor fragments or the moon covered in black frost. In a split second, the sound of wind whistling could be heard, and the surroundings were as silent as an abyss. The fire Qilin fanged snake's gaping mouth was hit by the countless cold star fragments, and it immediately writhed back and forth in pain. The black shadow gradually fell apart along with the exploding cold star fragments, completely shattering into a pile of fine powder. Mo Lien's phoenix eyes were unperturbed, and his handsome face revealed an icy intent. A merciless black flame appeared in his hand, and he abruptly disappeared from the spot. When he reappeared, he had already torn through the air and teleported in front of Long Yun. The merciless black flame formed an incomparably pitch-black supreme divine sword that pressed against Long Yun's throat. Don't think about it if it's not yours. The man's lips twitched as he coldly spat out these words. Chapter 55-33. The divine sword formed by the black fire instantly penetrated the other party's glabella, and the latter let out a wretched scream. His figure paused and abruptly rolled back and forth on the ground. His entire body was enveloped by dense black fire. Darling Duan Yu, who was standing on the side, couldn't resist patting his chest. So scary, what a scary stinky lotus. She actually used the black fire to mercilessly destroy the other party's conscience. She didn't give the other party any hope at all. Although she didn't kill him, wasn't it more tragic than killing him to completely sever his cultivation path and completely destroy that person's conscience? Thank goodness, Duan Yu was scared to death. Mo Lien stood up with icy eyes and coldly swept a glance at Long Yun on the ground. She turned to leave with a frown. Long Yun clutched his chest and looked up. He stared intently at her departing figure and suddenly started laughing like a madman. You think you've won? Ha 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 ha. He abruptly opened his mouth and spat out a snake gallbladder. This was the gallbladder he absorbed when fusing with the fire Qilan Fanged snake. Now, it had fused with his lifetime of cultivation. Our dear Duan Yu's eyes chilled, and he abruptly raised his hand. Thousands of arrows shot out from behind him like lightning bolts and swiftly swept past Mo Lien, heading in Long Yun's direction in unison. Thousands of arrows shot out in unison. Mo Lien narrowed her eyes and slightly tilted her head. She stared at a flying arrow forged from fine iron that abruptly brushed past her eyes. Each arrow was imbued with a god realm cultivation and spirit energy of various colors. Duan Yu, this guy, completely didn't want Long Yun to live. After a burst of wind, Long Yun hastily heard a sharp female cry, "Big brother." He felt a warm body suddenly pressing down on him. Countless arrows ruthlessly pierced that woman's body and even pierced the skin on his chest. But most of the arrows were blocked by Sikong Fulling. Long Yun's hands trembled slightly as he softly called out, "Fulling. Miss Sikong." Mu Xingchen, who had rushed over with his men, stared blankly at the scene before him. Sikong Fulling was firmly pressed against Long Yun's body, and her back had already been pierced by countless arrows brimming with various spiritual powers. Everyone saw that her body was like a deflated balloon, and blood was oozing out of her body. The various spiritual energies in his body were also colliding with each other, fiercely colliding with each other. Eldest brother. Blood continued to seep out from the corner of Sikong Fulling's mouth. Long Yun's hands trembled as he tried to wipe it off for her. However, the more he wiped, the more turbulent it became. Boom! Under the impact of the crisscrossing spiritual power in her body, Sikong Fulling suddenly disintegrated and completely exploded like an exploding ball. Fu Ling. Miss Sikong. Mu Xingchen clenched his fists slightly. For a moment, all sorts of emotions welled up in his heart. Duan Yu tilted his head. Suddenly, two heavenly birds screeched and desperately escaped from Seventh Yen and Chestnut's hands. They were riddled with wounds and mournful cries as they swooped down, carrying Long Yun on their backs as they staggered away. Duan Yu suddenly tugged at Mo Lien's sleeve. Forget it, don't chase them. Long Yun's conscience was damaged and could no longer do anything. Although Sikong Fulling had blocked countless arrows, it wasn't as if he hadn't been hit. Now that he had lost his divine conscience, his cultivation was damaged. Chapter 55-34. Moreover, the arrow that pierced Sikong Fulling earlier had more or less pierced this guy's body. Now that the spiritual energy in his body was intertwining and repelling each other, he probably wouldn't live for long. Taking a step back, even if he survived, he would probably be a powerless cripple. Proper business was more important, so there was no need to pursue a cornered enemy. Mo Lien threw Duan Yu a look before turning around to leave, dragging him along with him. Duan Yu couldn't resist knitting his brows. In the end, Mo Lien was still merciful towards the Long family. The tunnel is completely cleared. Eighth young Master Qi jogged over with a smile, dust flying from his body. He looked as if a burden had been lifted from his shoulders. Okay, let's set off now. Mo Lien also didn't want to wait a moment longer. Who knew how his wife was doing inside right now? Bring some people in first. Duan Yu quickly said, I'll clean up here and bring up the rear. Move faster. Mo Lien glanced at him from the corner of her eyes before turning to look at Mu Xingchen, who had been standing there in a daze for a long time. She sighed softly. I'll leave eldest brother to you. I know. Stop blabbering and scram, Duan Yu urged before instructing 8th Chi to lead Mo Lien to the tunnel entrance. He then led another group and called for Mu Xingchen to join them. Mu Xingchen recovered his wits, and a faint wry smile tugged at his lips. Miss Sikong seriously, she didn't even look back when she left. She just pounced on him without any hesitation and didn't even leave a single word in the end. So when she said she didn't have a choice, she had already made her choice. If she wasn't standing on the opposite side, this loyal and righteous girl might have what? Mu Xingchen shook his head in self-mockery. He suddenly raised his hand and caught something at lightning speed. He couldn't help but be startled. Seeing Duan Yu walking over, Mu Xingchen quickly withdrew that thing into his inner world and turned to nod at Duan Yu. Let's go. The Emperor of Zhangzhou was truly incomparably ruthless. The scene of thousands of arrows shooting in unison just now was still deeply etched in his memory. This Supreme Emperor did not have the slightest bit of mercy towards people. He waved his hand and gave the order to shoot Long Yun to death with arrows. What's wrong with you? Duan Yu indifferently swept a glance at Mu Xingchen. No, nothing. Mu Xingchen lifted his feet slightly and hurriedly followed. An hour later, with 8th Young Sir Chi's group leading the way, Mo Lien led the elites from the 3 provinces through the already opened underground passageway and finally entered the Qing Province Kingdom City District. The inner city is just ahead, said 8th Young Master Chi. Their movements were extremely fast. Based on their calculations, it was estimated that they would be able to leave the passage in another 2 hours and directly enter the inner city of the Qingzhou Kingdom's capital. Be careful. Huifeng suddenly flicked out a dagger. After a ding, the muffled roar of the corpse puppet could be heard from the tunnel. The passageway was narrow and only allowed one person to pass. Suddenly, a large group of corpse puppets came from the front. Although it wasn't too dangerous for them. However, clearing the path was indeed a waste of time. Where's Duan Yu? Mo Lien knitted her brows. Why hadn't he come down yet after dilly-dallying for so long? Just when she needed this guy to throw out concealed weapons, he disappeared without a trace. At the same time, Duan Yu stealthily chased after the 2 injured heavenly birds with Chestnut. His Chestnut wasn't exaggerating. He said that the 2 heavenly birds couldn't make it, and they really couldn't make it. Before them was a murky stream. Chapter 55-35. It was an extremely inconspicuous stream on an abandoned slope belonging to the Qingzhou Kingdom. The 2 heavenly birds were heavily injured in the battle earlier. At this time, they were lying by the stream on the verge of death, unable to even move their claws. And not far from them, there was a person sprawled on the ground. His light purple outer robe was completely soaked by the stream. That person's entire face was in the water, and his breathing was weak and lifeless. Duan Yu lightly stepped on the wet grass and took several steps forward. Tilting his head, this guy's left hand, which was behind his back, suddenly conjured a silvery white streak of light. Without waiting for an explanation, he threw it at the figure sprawled in the stream. Bam! The attack missed. The originally motionless man abruptly flipped in the air and clutched his chest as he coughed heavily. His handsome face was already pale as he stood by the stream. Duan Yu suddenly smiled. His smile was resplendent and bright, and his pair of peach blossom eyes blinked, pure yet not bewitching. I knew it. A scourge lives on for 10,000 years. You won't die so easily. Long Yun coughed heavily, his eyes filled with mockery. You. Duan Yu wagged a finger at him. I don't need you to speak right now. Long Yun knew that he was doomed today, so he silently took a step back and looked at the other party warily. However, at this moment, the slender and delicate figure in front of him suddenly disappeared in front of him. Long Yun's pupils contracted, and he abruptly turned around to look. In a split second, a long sword with rippling silver flames abruptly stabbed into his heart the moment he turned around. It was so precise that it was impossible to resist. Death came so suddenly. He held the long sword condensed from the Devil Emperor's fire in one hand, and blood flowed from his fingers along the sword's hilt, dripping down inch by inch. Duan Yu looked indifferently at the person before him. The other party's painful and contorted expression made him as calm as ever. Why? What, right, why? This was what young Master Long wanted to ask. Was this person crazy? They minded their own business, and at most, they just had different standpoints. Was there a need to chase him from 1,000 miles away to kill him? At the very least, the person he had always wanted to kill was Mo Lien. It was Mo Lien. What was wrong with this guy? What did he do to provoke him? Mo Lien had told him not to pursue a cornered enemy and let him leave. However, this person agreed on the surface and turned around to kill him. He was really sick. Duan Yu blinked and abruptly released his grip, allowing Long Yun to be stabbed in the chest and kneel on the ground like a pile of mud. The noble, elegant, and graceful emperor of Tsang province took out a clean handkerchief and carefully wiped his hands. He coldly glanced at Long Yun, who was curled up on the ground and not moving at all. You shouldn't have wanted to kill him. You shouldn't have taken out the fire Qilan Fanged snake's gallbladder and tried to take him down with you. Long Yun vaguely heard these words, and for a moment, his expression was a little startled and confused. Tsang Prefecture's emperor this is? What kind of special feelings were these? Could it be that, from the beginning to the end, the emperor of Tsangzhou loved the crown prince of the divine land? Liking his cousin was just a gargantuan pretense that he used to hide things, right? Even before he died, Long Yun felt that he was talking nonsense. He collapsed and did not hear the Tsang Prefecture's emperor's muttering. If you kill him, then what about Jojo? Jojo will cry. You don't like that Death Lotus, so it's fine if you beat him up, but how can you kill him? Chapter 55-36. I definitely won't let anyone hurt Xiao Qiao. Even if it's you, my cousin, I won't let you. Long Yun didn't hear Duan Yu's muttering. At this point, Long Yun had actually completely lost his 5 senses. He couldn't hear, see, or touch anything. In a daze, a white, misty mist seemed to appear in front of his eyes. A young lady dressed in white and with a jade face came out of the mist and walked towards him expressionlessly. Long Yun raised his hand slightly, as if wanting to grab her hand. But in one breath, he suddenly relaxed. He slammed his raised hand heavily on the side of the stream, allowing the murky water to pass through his wrist. Duan Yu's figure abruptly disappeared, only leaving behind a cold sentence. Go and clean up the dragon clan of forgetfulness, especially that troublesome Ding Xian. Don't leave behind any clues. Since the dragon clan of forgetfulness had been silent for so many years, there was no need for them to rise again. The Murong clan of forgetfulness sounded like a pretty good candidate for leader. The air stirred slightly before returning to silence. After some time, a slender figure wrapped in a green headscarf hurriedly ran over from the gurgling stream. That person stumbled over, and when she saw the motionless corpse lying in the stream, tears rolled down her cheeks. Her entire body seemed to have lost some sort of strength, and she abruptly collapsed on the ground, splashing up a few drops of water. She hurriedly crawled over with her arms and bawled as she hugged Long Yun. You little sweetheart, you finally can't run away anymore. Do you still remember that we met by a small stream back then, but you don't have any recollection of it afterward? Back then, he suddenly popped out when she was bathing in the stream. Didn't they form an inexplicable ill-fated relationship? Unexpectedly, as the paragon of the demonic cult, the Lord of Forgetfulness, he actually died in an unknown mountain stream in the Qingzhou kingdom. Do you regret it, sweetheart? The Raksha princess burst into tears, and her tender and alluring face seemed to have aged several years. I already told you not to meddle in this matter, but you just wouldn't listen. Do you regret it now? Do you regret it? The Raksha princess cried mournfully for a while. He raised his head and looked at the horizon. The sunset was red and the sun was setting. She hunched her back and picked up the drenched man. Half dragging and half carrying him, she walked forward. He didn't know where he was going. It was as if there was no place for them to hide in the vast world. Duan Yu hurriedly led his men into the passageway and discovered that Mo Lien and the others were almost done cleaning up the zombies underground. Seeing that he had finally arrived, Mo Lien looked at him suspiciously. "Where did you go? There are many harpies up there. We can only come down after we clean them up." Mo Lien glanced at him. "There should be a place for corpses up ahead." Duan Yu silently took out the 9 Jade Heaven's thunder. Crown Prince Rong hurriedly tried to dissuade him. "Your Majesty, this passageway is narrow. If we use large firearms or hidden weapons, I'm afraid the passageway will collapse. Otherwise, the Crown Prince of the Divine Prefecture would have used it a long time ago." Duan Yu pondered for a moment before stuffing the Jade Heavenly Thunder into his pocket. Then quickly clean it up. Manual cleaning was quite tiring. After all, this passageway only allowed one person to pass through, so only 1 or 2 people at the front of the group were bitterly cleaning up the zombies that pounced over. Thankfully, Crown Prince Rong and the others would switch places with the Crown Prince from time to time to withstand a wave of zombie attacks. However, Mo Lien felt like she had nothing left to live for. Chapter 55-37. How long would it take to clear these waves of zombies? This speed was too slow. If only Jojo was here. He could toss these things into the realm of misfortune and let them perish on their own. There would be no need to clear them. "Let me do it." Duan Yu couldn't help but scoff when he saw this guy's bitter expression. Prince Mo silently retreated. As he watched Duan Yu finish off several zombies with a swing of his sword, he couldn't resist asking quietly, "Are you going to bang?" Duan Yu threw out a burst of Devil Emperor fire, and everyone heard a loud rumble. Everyone instantly perked up. "It seems like we've reached the end." It wasn't seems, they had indeed reached the end of the passageway. Thus, Mo Lien also put down the question he wanted to ask earlier and hastily followed the crowd in brandishing their swords, smashing down the wall in front of them. Light seeped in. Everyone was overjoyed and hurriedly rushed over. At this time, the zombies were more or less cleared out. Occasionally, a few would crawl out of the narrow passageway, but they would be hacked to death by the elites of the 3 provinces before they could reach them. Duan Yu gestured to the 2 hidden guards at the front to have them go out first. Not long after, they heard a shout. "No problem, come out." Everyone hastily ran out in an orderly manner and lined up. They took a deep breath as they faced the setting sun and the red glow on the horizon. They finally came out. The inner city gate was right in front of them. As expected, boom, 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 boom. A strange sound was heard. Mo Lien and Duan Yu's expressions both shifted. They leaped onto the city wall first and ran toward the inner city with a whoosh. The people behind them quickly followed and flew over the city wall with a whoosh, chasing after the 2. As they ran, they discovered that the ramp in front of them seemed to be gradually becoming steeper. No, that wasn't right. The city in front of them was rising into the sky. The entire city was starting to soar. So as they ran along the city path, they felt their bodies slowly tilting backward. The path in front of them slanted into the sky bit by bit and gradually became steeper. Vassal Prince Rong and the others' expressions changed. However, they saw dozens of Transcendence Realm cultivators following the Crown Prince of the Divine Province and His Majesty of Tsang Province leaping up at the same time. Their figures abruptly disappeared into a thick fog. 2 cold voices came from the sky. "Purge the entire Qingzhou city. Arrange for Huang He and Mr. Su to come here and distribute the antidote for the 3rd stage. Let's see if those who haven't completely turned into zombies have a chance to recover." "Yes." A thunderous roar resounded from below. Crown Prince Rong raised his head worriedly to take a look. Under the setting sun, the sky was completely covered by thick fog. The main city that had suddenly flown into the sky seemed to have completely disappeared. Arbor leaned against the window and looked down in surprise. After the rumbling sound, the whole house started to shake. She knew that the city had ascended. To make the entire inner city of the main city soar into the sky, it was truly a huge investment. He did not know how long Tianyun had been preparing for this. At present, the entire inner city was enveloped by the flying talisman array and multiple defensive arrays. It was indeed very difficult for Mo Yen, Duan Yu, and the others to break in from the outside. The little stoic was pondering while leaning against the window with her chin in her hands when she suddenly heard a soft sound. When she turned around, she saw fifth young Master Qin standing below the windowsill with a ghastly pale face, looking at her in a daze. Chapter 55-38. Why would you commit suicide? Walk right into a trap. After he came out of seclusion, a boy servant secretly came to report that the crown princess of the divine province was imprisoned here. He thought it was a fantasy story. How could such a shrewd person like the little stoic come here by herself? Without waiting for Arbor to speak, the fifth young master hastily flipped in through the window and grabbed her hand, saying impatiently, "Let's go quickly. While they're dealing with the patriarch in the forecourt, I'll send you out." Deal with the patriarch? Arbor thought he had been confused for a moment and looked at the fifth young master in astonishment. Is it the one from your family? Patriarch Tianyun? Emichim, who's dealing with him? Second brother. Fifth Qin tightly grasped her wrist. Don't say so much. Let's talk after we get out. You're a talisman practitioner, so you should be very clear about talisman formations. I'll send you to the center of the talisman formation. Find a chance to destroy the formation core and quickly escape. The little stoic's heart warmed slightly, and she looked up at this person. When this person first met her, his nose wasn't his nose and his eyes weren't his eyes. Moreover, although she had saved him several times, it wasn't out of bad intentions. One time, she saved him in passing for a mission, and the other time, someone else paid for it. Arbor pondered. Can I go to the front to take a look? You want to go take a look? Fifth young Master Qin was taken aback and quickly shook his head. It's too late. From the looks of it, even with Hall Master Lu helping the patriarch, he doesn't seem to be second brother's match at all. They've turned against each other. Arbor blinked, unable to conceal his excitement. Oh my god, she hadn't even made a move yet someone else had already turned against each other. It was especially comical just thinking about it. Arbor hastily pulled fifth young Master Qin back. Where are the guards outside? I've temporarily knocked them out. I'll take you out first. Where's Du Galing? Du Galing, this bastard, had been standing guard outside the whole time. He's also in the forecourt. How could second brother not bring young Master Dugu and young Master Ouyang for such an important matter like encircling and annihilating the patriarch? Arbor nodded excitedly. If that's the case, I'll be letting myself down if I don't take a look. Tianyun, that dog-shit ancestor, had done so many things in his past and present life. Now that he was being hunted down by his descendants, it would be a pity if he didn't see such a satisfying thing. Fifth Qin hastily grabbed her. Jojo. Arbor glanced at him and pouted helplessly. Okay, let's go. If he didn't want to look, then so be it. The talisman array had just risen into the air, and it was good to find the array core. He had to find Mo Lien and the others in the array first. She suspected that Mo Lien and the others might have also ascended into the sky. However, there were layers upon layers of spirit arrays outside. If they didn't have two capable symbol masters among them, it wouldn't be easy for them to break in. As soon as the two of them left the courtyard, earth-shattering roars and curses could be heard from the front yard. Fifth young Master Qin glanced at her nervously and said in a low voice, Jojo, don't be so curious. Let's hurry and find the exit of the array core and send you out. Who was curious? Wasn't she just leaving the courtyard and finding the noise very interesting, so she couldn't resist taking a few glances behind her? Fifth young Master Qin led her through the corridors and courtyards before finally arriving at a remote courtyard. He pointed ahead. Quickly sense if there's talisman energy flowing here. It's barely discernible. This is a symbol master, no, it seems to be the power of talismans. Arbor's eyes were slightly cold. This is a formation set up by a great symbol master. Hall Master Lu is very formidable. Be careful. Arbor frowned. Hall Master Lu? Who? Talisman Hall's Hall Master, Lu Fusheng. Fifth young Master Qin said without holding back. It turned out that mysterious Talisman Hall's Hall Master was called Lu Fusheng. Arbor nodded and glanced at fifth young master. I'll be right back. Stay further away and protect yourself. Arbor flashed and entered the courtyard's talisman formation. At the same time, a middle-aged man who was frowning and listening to young Master Omega Kotoku's words in the front yard suddenly had a change in expression. Someone entered the formation. He hurriedly flashed and was already far away. Second young master didn't stop him. Instead, he hurriedly left with him after leaving behind a sentence. Lock him up for now. Hearing second young master's order, the group of Transcendence Realm cultivators led by Du Guling couldn't help but look at each other. Their gazes focused on the man who was meditating with his eyes closed and was bound by 17 to 18 spirit-binding chains. This person had a white face and no beard. He looked to be about 40 years old. His eyes were closed and his head was lowered. Even though he was covered in spirit-binding chains, he didn't panic at all. This person was their Qin Estate's patriarch, Qin Heijin. Patriarch Black Gold. From the establishment of Heavenly Fate to its current state, Patriarch Black Gold had been behind every step of the way. The Qin Estate relied on pills to develop. Heavenly Fate relied on these corpse puppets and corpse poison medicinal liquid to develop. Patriarch Black Gold had always been the pride of their entire family. He was the core of the entire Qin Estate. But now, Omega Kotoku felt that he didn't need this person anymore. He wanted to let Arbor know that he was the only one who treated her the most wholeheartedly. For her, he could betray his entire family. He could even throw away Heavenly Fate, which was such a powerful force that the Patriarch had created, just for her. He crazily wanted to start all over again and start all over again. He didn't want to care about anything else. Lu Fusheng discovered that someone had touched his talisman formation. Other than Arbor, there was no one else who could think of. He had always known about the existence of Arbor, a great talisman master. To be able to kill so many of Grandmaster Ye's outstanding disciples and make Grandmaster Yi have no choice but to sacrifice Luo He's life to deal with this woman, she was naturally very impressive. He originally wanted to leave her out for a while, but he didn't expect that second young master's sudden attack today would mess up all his plans. Lu Fusheng had always wanted to have a talisman duel with Arbor. For a young girl to be able to surpass Grandmaster Yi in the Tao of Talismans, it was really commendable. But that was the end of her journey. Lu Fusheng's figure suddenly landed in a remote courtyard. His gaze was like a torch as he stared at the empty space in front of him. Reveal talisman, reveal talisman, reveal talisman. Lu Fusheng expressionlessly flicked his sleeve, and several talismans were thrown out in front of him. However, the expected figure didn't appear. Instead, 4 or 5 attack talismans suddenly appeared in the air and forced him to retreat several steps. Lu Fusheng clenched his fists. What an outstanding little girl. She was actually able to force him to take a few steps back. In Lu Fusheng's hand, 3 rows of talismans appeared, and he suddenly shot them in front of him. The talisman power seemed to have swayed into a bottomless ocean. In an instant, it was completely absorbed by the emptiness in front of him. Young Master Omega Kotoku and his entourage rushed over. Seeing this scene, their eyes darkened. With a shout, Lu Fusheng suddenly flicked out hundreds of talismans again. This time, the talismans he flicked out were all god-level profound Een talismans. As soon as the talismans appeared, ghostly wails and howls sounded all around, forcing eldest young Master Qin and his entourage to hastily retreat. Arbor's figure suddenly appeared in the middle of the profound Een talisman array formed by the profound Een talismans and stared expressionlessly at that person. This person should be the mysterious talisman hall master of the talisman array? Arbor glanced at him and was about to make a move. Suddenly, a sound pierced through the air. Arbor's heart skipped a beat, and he hurriedly threw out a talisman. She looked at the broken knife that seemed to have jumped out of a storage talisman. In fact, only she knew that this broken knife had been kept in her inner world all this time. Today, it suddenly became restless. The knife was instantly unsheathed. It was no longer as bright as before, and there was even a small hole on its blunt edge. Lu Fusheng looked at the short knife in a daze. Why is it with you? Lu Fusheng stared at Arbor with a complicated expression. Arbor stilled and suddenly remembered what fifth young master had told her. This mysterious talisman hall master was called Lu Fusheng. She had seen and touched the short knife her mother had left behind. The words, Fusheng, were engraved on it. Your knife? Arbor's expression also turned complicated. She sized up the middle-aged man and asked in an uncertain tone, You? For my mother? Lu Fusheng was agitated. He clenched his fists tightly and stared at Arbor with eyes that seemed to shatter ice shards in the night. You deserve to die. Lu Fusheng suddenly started attacking like a madman, repeatedly flinging the talismans and curses on his body at Xiao Mu. Lu Fusheng, are you crazy? Eldest young master Qin couldn't help scolding and hurriedly threw a look at Gong Songfeng and the others. Gong Songfeng, Fan Meng, and the others hurried forward to stop him. However, once a talisman master's talisman array was activated, it would take some effort for outsiders to barge in. Young Master Omega Kotoku's expression was extremely cold as he abruptly turned to glare at fifth young master standing to the side. You brought her here? He abruptly struck out a palm at fifth young master. The mighty force gave eldest young master Qin a fright, and he hurriedly dodged to block it. After a bam, eldest young master received Qin Xian's palm. His expression changed slightly, and his body swayed uncontrollably. Eldest brother. Similarly startled, fifth young master hurriedly ran forward and reached out to support eldest young master Qin, who was retreating several steps. You want to take her and run? Young master Omega Kotoku pressed on. Eldest young master hurriedly blocked him with a furious expression. Second brother, are you trying to kill your own brother? On the other side, Lu Fusheng, who was crazily attacking Arbor, had a ferocious expression on his face. Especially when he heard Arbor's mocking voice. You couldn't get my mother, so you're venting your vengeful heart on her daughter? Lu Fusheng, you're truly promising. Shut up. Lu Fusheng shouted angrily. What do you know? What do you know? Chu Yun and I were childhood sweethearts to begin with, and we've long been engaged for life. If it weren't for that so-called marriage alliance between clans, for that bullshit engagement, how could Chu Yun possibly betray the love between us for so many years? Oh, Arbor's voice became increasingly icy and merciless, revealing traces of chilliness. Because you love my mother, you hate me, this daughter's existence. Joining Tianyun and aiding the evildoer is your way of loving my mother? Making things difficult at every turn for the daughter she protected with her life and even killing her precious daughter is your way of loving someone? Ha 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 ha. Arbor sneered repeatedly. Lu Fusheng, hurry up and stop using your cheap love on my mother. You're not worthy. When everyone present heard the little stoic's chilly voice, they couldn't help but shiver all over. The little stoic was as frightening as ever when she insulted people. Arbor pushed out a powerful mystic talisman and coldly watched that talisman explode on Lu Fusheng's body, blasting him back several steps. Lu Fusheng, the hall master of talismans and spells, should have known her identity a long time ago. As Long Chuyun's daughter, Arbor and the whole world knew about it. However, Lu Fusheng was jealous of her identity, jealous that she was Long Chuyun's daughter, so he hid in Tianyun and made things difficult for her at every turn. That's right, the stairway talisman this person created greatly troubled her, and it also made her wary of this mysterious existence, the Hall of Talismans and Spells. This was one of Lu Fusheng's ways of loving her mother. To deal with her daughter, it would be best if her daughter died a horrible death and became Tianyun's puppet. Ha 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 ha. What an enormous joke. You're truly disgusting. Arbor's gaze chilled, and he casually threw out a soul-stealing talisman. Lu Fusheng's expression changed, and he instantly pulled a disciple in front of him to block. However, the talisman's remaining power exploded on his body, causing him to retreat several steps and spit out a large mouthful of blood. Go die. I'm your mother's true love. Lu Fuxing's expression changed as he looked at the several hundred soul-stealing talismans flying toward him in astonishment. That's right, this young lady in front of him was a pervert who used talismans. I even dared to kill my own father, so what kind of dog are you, let alone you, my mother's former lover? You dared to scheme against me. I thought you already knew that you would die. Die, die, die. Arbor's eyes were filled with an ominous glint. The talismans in her hand flew out, and the heavy talisman power merged into a ball and bombarded Lu Fuxing's body. Lu Fuxing collapsed to the ground on the spot. There was a large hole in his chest, and his intestines were about to spill out. Everyone stared at the little stoic, flabbergasted. At this time, young Master Omega Kotoku flew straight up and swiped his sword across Lu Fuxing's neck. He then flew in front of Arbor and grabbed her wrist. Lu Fuxing probably didn't expect that he would die here today, in Arbor's hands. He reached out to cover the bleeding wound on his neck, and he stared blankly at the sudden darkness of the night. It was as if he could see a man and woman sitting back to back under the eaves of the ivy-covered corridor. Fuxing, I want to go to the Divine Province's Mu family for a marriage alliance. I already promised my mother. Don't come looking for me again in the future. Lu Fuxing looked at the boundless sky unwillingly. He couldn't tell if it was loneliness, shame, or vexation. His hand tightly gripped that blunt knife. He was a bit regretful before Chu Yun left Wangchuan. They fought in a fit of pique. She slashed the knife on the table, and a small chip appeared on the blade. In the end, the two didn't say a word. He thought that there would be a chance to meet again, that they would meet again in the future. Who would have thought that Fuxing was really like a dream? That farewell at Wangchuan turned out to be forever. Now he was lying on the cold ground, looking up at the night sky. There were no stars, no moon, no wind, no rain. Just like when he gave her this Fuxing saber, he couldn't hide the joy in his eyes. I am determined to be a master refiner. Chu Yun, I'll give it to you. Then you have to work hard. This saber of yours is really not that good. Arbor was pulled back to Crane Garden by the silent second young master. Along the way, he was a little depressed and nervous. He stumbled and fell. When they returned to the garden, young Master Omega Kotoku waved his hand and set up a defensive shield to prevent outsiders from entering. Arbor looked at him expressionlessly. He subconsciously felt that something was going to happen. As if he was about to come into contact with something real, he was both excited and nervous. No, it's a strange emotion. Young Master Omega Kotoku seemed to have been provoked. His eyes glowed green as he stared at her coldly. Is it disgusting to not get what you want? He pressed on, his voice sinister. Is it disgusting to not get what you want? Do you think that love that you can't get is cheap? Arbor pretended to be frightened and fell to the side of the bed. She hugged the gauze next to her and looked at him, trembling like a small animal. Little Tree Chiochio roared in her consciousness, Master, come in quickly. It felt that something was wrong, as if something big was about to happen. It's okay, Chiochio. He won't kill me. Arbor's eyes hid a strange emotion. This emotion came so suddenly and so quickly that even she didn't know what she was secretly hoping for. It was as if some strange memory suddenly flashed through her mind. It was so fast that she couldn't catch it. She couldn't catch anything, she couldn't catch anything. Little Xiao, look at me. Look at me and tell me. Should I die if I can't get what I want? His eyes were filled with a thick gloominess, like the prelude to a flash flood. His fingers gripped her left wrist tightly, and he coldly asked, Speak. Arbor's big round almond eyes were wide open. She stared at him coldly with a strange light in her eyes. Crack. The pain of her bones breaking suddenly attacked her brain. However, the strange thing was that her entire heart was much calmer than usual, much calmer and more peaceful. Master. Seeing that Feng Zhangqing and the others in the star domain were all about to rush out and beat up young Master Omega Kotoku, Arbor could still keep a clear head. She ordered Qiuqiu, "I'm fine, Qiuqiu. Don't let any of them come out." "I'm fine, Qiuqiu." Master Qiuqiu was so distressed that he almost couldn't speak. She hadn't cried, but Qiuqiu was already crying uncontrollably. "Master, doesn't it hurt, Master?" "It hurts, of course it hurts. It hurts a lot." Arbor muttered to herself, but her eyes were brighter than ever. She softly said to Qiuqiu in her conscience, "Didn't you take the bone-forging pill? Didn't you want to forge your bones and be reborn?" She knew that none of her little friends in the star domain would be willing to do such a thing to her. But now wasn't it just right? Her mind was clearer than usual, and her eyes were brighter. She stared at young Master Omega Kotoku like this. In her clear eyes, she could almost make Omega Kotoku see his own ugly shadow. "Why aren't you talking?" Young Master Omega Kotoku's eyes were full of malice. He ruthlessly broke another one of her hands. His warm fingers gently brushed her cheek. "Didn't you want to run? I'm guessing that if you can only lie down and do nothing, you won't be able to run anywhere." Arbor suddenly chuckled. Strangely, even she herself felt that her laughter at this moment was somewhat frightening. Why was she laughing so strangely? Her clear eyes stared fixedly at the man in front of her. Suddenly, the figure in the bright red wedding dress seemed to flash past her eyes. Yes, in her previous life, she was forced to marry Omega Kotoku. But on the day of the wedding, Brother Qin, the mournful cry rang in her ears. In front of Arbor's eyes, it was as if the memory fragments were being reorganized. She saw Qin Xian in a bright red dress, his eyes flashing with a faint green light, the sword dripping with blood in his hand piercing through Duanmu Qing's chest. That's right, it was like this. Sir Jojo finally remembered. That day was just like now. Qin Xian grabbed her shoulders, shook her back and forth, and asked her why she wanted to run and why she rejected him. Yes, he said, he had already given in step by step and begged her. Why couldn't she understand his heart? Yes, there was a deviation in her memory. The mermaid pearl in her body had once repaired her limbs in her previous life. So on the day of the wedding, she was indeed not carried in by someone. Instead, she was led in by someone. Qin Xian killed Duanmu Qing and cruelly broke her limbs again on the day of the wedding. He broke them. He wanted her to be unable to run away for all eternity. She could not run away for all eternity. And then? There was no then. Because on the night of the wedding, she suddenly self-destructed in front of him. He. Arbor stared at the man in front of her and suddenly broke into a smile. Ever since she was reborn, this unbearable past had been buried in the deepest part of her heart. She had never thought about it and never wanted to think about it. Was the truth actually like this? It turned out that his previous life was 10,000 times more tragic than he had imagined. Think about it, a young lady whose limbs were broken, who could only live like a little worm, who was in a constant state of anxiety, finally regained her mobility one day. The funny thing was, on a certain day, at a certain time, all her happiness was cut off. So in her previous life, she self-destructed in a fit of madness. Haha. No wonder she self-destructed. No one would be able to take it if they were crippled again after just a few days of standing up. Arbor looked at the man in front of her calmly and only smiled at him again. Her smile was strange and calm. She smiled so much that even she felt a little embarrassed. It was indeed a fateful entanglement. No wonder she found Second Qin's crazed gaze bewitching and familiar. As it turned out, she had experienced it once before. What was even more frightening was that the young Crown Prince Consort's limbs seemed to be limp and drooping. It looked like her hands and feet had been broken. Long Cheng was also excited. Seeing Arbor's misfortune through the cage, he could not help but be overjoyed like Mu Xiaoxue. Mu Xiaoxue raised the whip. How could he stop her? He even egged her on. Hit her properly. If it were not for this bitch, the Long family would not have fallen to such a state. They directly escaped from the capital and came to a place like Tianyun. They could only do small chores. As the eldest young master of the Long family, he was not valued at all. Mu Xiaoshua's eyes flashed with malice. She also could not suppress her excitement and trembling. Great, this damned woman had finally fallen into her hands. Wasn't she arrogant and domineering? Didn't she say that she wanted to make Mu Xiaoxua suffer a fate worse than death? Now, let's see who will be the first to suffer a fate worse than death. Haha. Mu Xiaoxua waved the whip in her hand across the big iron cage. Pa! It caused a spark on the iron cage. She did not know if her eyesight was bad or if she was a good-for-nothing to begin with, but there was no strength in her hand at all. The gap in the iron cage was so large that the whip only hit the cage and did not touch Arbor at all. Long Chang couldn't help but panic when he saw this. He snatched the whip from Mu Xiaoshua's hand and shouted, "Let me do it." "What kind of eyesight do you have?" Long Chang's eyes flashed with excitement as he lashed the whip on the ground, causing sparks to fly. He shouted in an unclear voice, "Little slut, I'll let you have a taste of my flesh being torn apart." Pa! Ah! A scream pierced the clouds. Arbor expressionlessly looked at the three fools in front of him, his gaze unwavering. Qin Xian snatched the whip from Long Chang's hand and whipped him 3 times in a row, causing that fool to roll around and wail in pain. Long Min was so anxious that he knelt on the ground with a bang and repeatedly kowtowed to beg for mercy. "Eldest young master, spare my life. Eldest young master, please spare my life." Long Chang did not do it on purpose. Eldest young master, eldest young master. Qin was about to explode from anger. Who was that? That was the little stoic Jojo. The little stoic who had always held her chin up proudly and strode forward without recognizing her own family, putting on an insufferably arrogant appearance. But now, she was in such a wretched state. Even 3 ignorant dogs could casually bully her. Unbelievable. Jojo. The 7 flowers in red and green called out to her mournfully and rushed to the front of the cage, sobbing and sobbing. Arbor sat there as motionless as a mountain, but his brows twitched imperceptibly. "Why are you crying?" "Jojo, you're too pitiful." Red Shirt, who had reached her hand into the cage, sobbed uncontrollably. Of course, it was just like how eldest young Master Qin's Lady Jojo had to be high-spirited. The Jojo in 7 Flowers' eyes had always been a little fellow who would act cute with a stoic face. She was a fellow who would hold your hand and seriously ask, "Is Spring House a restaurant?" When had they ever seen her in such a wretched state? Not only were her limbs broken, but she was even locked in a cage to pass her days miserably. Ouyang Su, who was standing on the side, didn't even know where to put her hands and feet. She only stammered, Don't be like this. Second young master will be back soon. It's better to leave quickly." "Don't worry, the little stoic, she's fine what?" Qin Xian couldn't resist retorting, "She's already like this, yet you say she's fine?" He didn't know that this alchemist Ouyang was actually a quack who could lie through her teeth. Ouyang Su said weakly, "Little Miss Chiao seems to be in bad shape. Actually, when I took her pulse, I felt that her body is not bad." "Bullshit." Red Shirt couldn't resist spitting at him. She grabbed the little stoic's hand and turned to say to eldest young Master Qin, "Young master, let's smash this cage and take the little stoic away." Right, smash this cage." Bam! A gust of wind shot in from outside the door and swiftly knocked away Qin Xian's outstretched hand. Eldest young Master Qin turned around, and his chilly gaze landed on the newcomer. Dressed in red, the Omega Kotoku young master strode in and coldly stared at his elder brother. "Elder brother, I advise you to stop here." Qin Xian said coldly, "If you insist on doing things your own way, I'm afraid we won't be able to continue being brothers." Eldest young Master Qin's eyes revealed a complicated expression. When he turned to look at the pitiful, little stoic in the cage, his brows ached, and tears were about to seep out of his eyes. The little stoic's appearance truly made one's heart ache and was extremely unbearable. Second brother, have you gone mad? What do you mean by this? This isn't loving her at all. This kind of love is truly frightening. How is this love? It's simply possessiveness. How could the Omega Kotoku young master listen to him? His gaze landed coldly on him. Eldest brother, please don't casually step into my courtyard in the future. Otherwise, my sword will probably run through your body. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.